From Washington, this is VOA News. A deadly day and night in the capital city of Ukraine. Praise for Tunisia by the U.S. Secretary of State. I'm Ira Melman reporting from Washington. Fires burned and stun grenades ripped through the center of the Ukrainian capital early Wednesday as riot police charged the main opposition protest camp after clashes killed at least 21 people, including 7 police officers. Police and opposition representatives said many of the dead were killed by gunshots and hundreds more were injured, with dozens in serious condition. At least 18 people, including the 7 police officers, died in the capital of Kiev early Wednesday as riot police charged the main opposition camp. U.S. Vice President Joe Biden phoned President Viktor Yanukovych to express grave concern about the violence, calling on the Ukrainian president to pull back security forces and to exercise maximum restraint. Biden told Mr. Yanukovych his government bears special responsibility to resolve the crisis. The White House said Tuesday the United States is appalled by the violence in Kiev and urged the Ukrainian president to de-escalate.
White House Press Secretary Jay Carney said the U.S. is appalled by the violence that was already taking place in Kiev and reports of armed riot police massing on the edge of Independence Square, also known as Maidan, the main protester camp.
Force will not resolve the crisis. To restore peace and stability, we urge President Yanukovych to de-escalate immediately the situation and end the confrontation at Maidan.
The U.S. Embassy in Kiev issued an update on its website about the latest violence, advising all U.S. citizens to maintain a low profile and to remain indoors. The statement advised all U.S. citizens to avoid all protests, demonstrations, and large gatherings, saying the situation in Ukraine is unpredictable and could change quickly. Dan Robinson, VOA News, the White House.
Follow the situation in Ukraine on our website at voanews.com. The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry made an unannounced visit to Tunisia Tuesday to praise progress in the country where the Arab Spring began 3 years ago.
The Tunisian people have ratified a new constitution, a constitution that is rooted in democratic principles, equality, freedom, security, economic opportunity, and the rule of law. And it is a constitution that can serve as a model for others in the region and around the world.
Tunisia's new constitution sets out to make the country a democracy not based on Islamic law, but some government opponents say the constitution does not do enough to protect women's rights. Islamic militants calling themselves supporters of Jerusalem have claimed responsibility for an apparent suicide attack on a tourist bus carrying Korean pilgrims in the Sinai Sunday. The group has claimed responsibility for several previous attacks.
Mourners chanted the funeral liturgy for the slain driver of the tourist bus at Mar Gerges Church in Cairo Tuesday as the Egyptian media lashed out at terrorists for the Sinai attack that killed 3 people, including 2 South Koreans. A statement by the group, calling itself Ansar Beit al-Maqdis, claimed responsibility for the apparent suicide bombing. The Arabic text called the bomber a hero and said the attack was part of the group's economic war against Egyptian authorities. The authenticity of the statement could not be confirmed. Edward Uranian for VOA News, Cairo.
The Venezuelan opposition leader Leopoldo Lopez has reemerged from days of hiding. He did that Tuesday to address an anti-government demonstration, and then he handed himself over to security forces in Caracas. The 42-year-old Harvard-educated economist who has spearheaded an opposition protest movement was wanted on charges including murder and terrorism. He said turning himself in will open the world's eyes to Venezuela's increasingly authoritarian socialist government. Days of bloody anti-government street protest have resulted in 4 deaths. Lopez's Popular Will Party is protesting soaring inflation, shortages in supermarkets, and rampant crime. President Nicolas Maduro accuses Lopez of inciting violence and leading a U.S.-backed conspiracy to oust him from power. Monday, Mr. Maduro ordered the expulsion of 3 U.S.
Bring in, as promised, Academy Award-winning documentary filmmaker Michael Moore. Michael, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is Rachel Maddow. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening, Keith.
There's been a spike in the desire to own guns in Connecticut. Statewide, over 90,000 guns have been authorized for sale. You know how I feel about it.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Oh, yeah. It is Tuesday, the 18th of February. About another month to go, and then we'll be in the spring. I think we're just going to jump right over to the winter. Right to summer is what it's looking like. But you're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. I am your host, Jeff Norton. You can join me live here every Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. till 12 a.m. Central Standard Time, or on the web at www.patriotfb.com. That is www.patriotfb.com. If you'd like to join in the conversation, give us a call at 1-800-580-4870. That's 1-800-580-4870. Love to hear from you. Pull up a seat. Join us in tonight's festivities. In the second hour, talking about festivities, it's always going to be a festive conversation with Mr. Stone Anthony, presidential candidate for the 2016 presidential race, starting to form up, starting to see who he's going to be running against. You know, it's amazing. They all sit there and think, "Oh, nothing to see here," as they all go to Iowa. Oh no, we're not raising money. No, we're not running. We don't know yet. Oh, Lord, it's amazing. You know, it's going to get to the point where we're just going to have perpetual elections, where when one election, 2016, when one election is just going to start the next election cycle. You know, maybe that's why they can't get anything done up there on the hills, because they're too busy about what's going to happen in 4 years, getting ready. They're campaigning already. You know, I think there ought to be a law that says when you run for political office and you are elected to that political office, you can't campaign but the last month. Right? Maybe that would keep the president in the White House. Maybe he would have taken the phone call over the Benghazi instead of being in Las Vegas with all of his donors panhandling for money, instead of his advisor, Mrs. Rice, taking the call and giving the orders. Maybe. Who knows? But that's a topic for later on tonight. We'll get into that, I am sure. We're going to carry over our topic that we started yesterday about the economy. The shoe has dropped. I got a little parable for you to kind of put it in perspective. But before we do anything, and I appreciate you guys, it lets me know that we do actually have listeners that listen. I got criticized very heavily today because we did not start our show off the right way. So I'm not going to make that mistake twice. So here you go. Hey, that's adorable. Hey, if you have a Pledge of Allegiance audio of your kids at school, or if you even want to do just record your children, send it to me. Send it to me in a WAV format. We'll convert it. We'll get it ready for the air. Love to play it on the air. Love to promote that. I think it's very important. So you can send that to me at Jeff, Jeff, at themidnightpatriot.com. That's Jeff at themidnightpatriot.com. If you are a member of patriotfb.com, you can just message it to me. Just type in my last name, Norton, Norton, in the search. I'll pop up. And then you can send it to me. Love to have it. If you have a video or something that you see that you enjoy, please send that on to us, and we'll get that on the air as soon as possible. Now, please rise and raise your right hand. I, Jeffrey W. Norton, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the organic Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office in which I'm about to enter, so help me God. So help me God. So like I said, as we were coming on and stuff, we're going to have Mr. Stone Anthony is going to be joining us at the top of the second hour, talking about, I'm sure, about foreign policy. I think that it's so appropriate with everything that's going on, and it seems, we used to say that with every conflict in the world, there was always one underlying, recent conflicts, I should say, there was always one underlying group that was involved. Always. And you can do the history and you can figure that out on your own. But as of today, I am finding out and listening to the news reports and hearing about our diplomats being summoned and being told to remove themselves from certain countries. It seems like America, the good old US of A, is now the perpetrator. Now, of course, we go in there with the guise of freedom, but do you actually truly think that we're trying to sell them freedom, or are we trying to sell them, open up new markets, extract more resources? Is that what's actually going on? No, I'm a firm believer that that's the case. That's the truth. So we'll talk about that, foreign policy, I'm sure, with Mr. Stone Anthony, presidential candidate 2016, as he joins us in the second hour. But I want to kind of continue the conversation that we had yesterday. I think, great information about the economy. I think we saw another shoe drop today, and we'll get to that here in a few minutes. But I want to share with you a parable that believe it or not, a pastor friend of mine told me years ago, and it's kind of stuck with me. And, being from the South, we tend to have some pretty violent storms. We have a lot of flooding and a lot of tornadoes and certain things. And so this was kind of timely. And it's actually timely with today's economic news. And basically it goes like this. We're sitting there and the weatherman gets on the air and he says, we're going to have a 100-year flood. It's coming. And you being a good Christian-minded person, you pray. You say, Lord Jesus, I've been here for family home forever, and I know that you will put your hedge of protection around me and my family, and we will be safe. So then the storm comes, the rain falls, the rivers start to crest, and then they overflow, and the waters are slowly creeping to your house. So then your next door neighbor comes by and he says, hey, look, why don't you, I got some extra room in the pickup truck, why don't you grab your belongings, throw them in the back of the truck, and, we'll get out of here. And you say, oh, no. God's going to take care of me. We prayed, and once again, we'll pray again that God put his hedge of protection around us, and we'll be okay. So a few hours pass, and water is now pouring into your house. But you still keep the faith. One of the National Guards comes by, in their little motorboat rescue unit comes by and says, why don't you grab your personal belongings? We'll throw them in back here. We'll get you to safety. And you're like, no, the waters will recede. It's okay. But I'm going to stay with the house. I prayed to God, and He's going to protect me. And a few hours pass, and that the water is now cresting over the second floor of your house, and you're on top of your roof. And the helicopter comes flying by, and they see you there, and they use their blowhorns and they holler down at you. And they say, grab the harness, put it on, leave your personal possessions. We don't have room, but we're here to rescue you. We'll drive you to safety. And you say, no, the waters are going to recede. I have faith in my Lord Jesus Christ. He's going to save me. I prayed. He put a hedge of protection. Well, letting you make your free choice, they move on. And no sooner than that, you're swept off your house and you meet your demise. As you sit there at the pearly gates and you're sitting there with St. Peter and Paul and all of the angels and everything, you have this look of dismay on you. So St. Peter comes over to you and he says, son, what seems to be troubling you? And he goes, I don't have faith anymore. And St. Peter doesn't understand. And he goes, well, let's get Jesus involved. Maybe he can talk to you. So they take you to Jesus, and Jesus is sitting there and saying, brother, don't be forsaken. I am here. You're with your Lord and Savior. And he goes, and the man goes, God, Jesus, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I just don't understand. Jesus goes, what do you mean you don't understand? He goes, I prayed. I prayed for that wall of the hedge of protection that they talk about, and I'm a faithful, good, spirited Christian. And Jesus kind of looks at the man with an inquisitive look, and he goes, what? I don't understand. Why are you upset? He goes, but Jesus, you let me perish. You let my house, my family, my farm, everything perish. And Jesus goes, well, I sent you a weatherman. I sent your neighbor. I sent a boat. And I sent a helicopter. What else do you want from me? Now, I want you to remember that parable. I want you to remember that. Because when we get back from the break, we're going to talk. We're going to talk about the messages, the information, the things that are being said, as we talked about yesterday on the show. And we have more news, more messages, more signals, more signs. And one of the things that we're all about here at Patriot FB is we want to give you the knowledge so you can make good, solid decisions for yourself and your family. And I can't think of any more greater signs than what we're going to talk about when we get back from the break. But you're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast.
Join us at www.patriotfb.com, a social network for patriots. Get involved. Support Stone Anthony for President. www.stoneanthony2016.com. Put a real American in the White House. For all your prepping needs, visit our friends at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com or call 208-615-6331. 208-615-6331.
Than what she's left me on the side of the road. The older she gets, the slower we go. But there ain't nothing wrong wrong with the radio. She needs a carburetor, a set of plug wires. She's riding me around on 4-ball tires. The wipers don't work and the horn don't blow, but there ain't nothing wrong with the radio. I've got 60 speakers crossing my back dash, a little bobbing dog watching everybody pass. Dual antennas whipping in the wind. Oh, there ain't a country station that I can't tune in. Oh, she ain't a Cadillac and she ain't a Rogue, but there ain't nothing wrong with a radio.
Mr. Aaron Tippin, there ain't nothing wrong with your radio. That's right, there is nothing wrong with your radio. You're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Norton. You can join me live here every Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. till 12 a.m. Central Standard Time, or on the web at www.patriotfb.com. If you'd like to join in the conversation, the call-in number is 1-800-580-4870. That's 1-800-580-4870. Love to commune with you, conversation with you. That's what the show's all about. It's just about the conversation. But like yesterday's conversation, I want to kind of bring it back. If you didn't have an opportunity to listen to yesterday's show, I think you should. We had a very excellent show on economic policies. And I was going to go on to more of the Common Core, and there was two things that kind of, once I said, I've always said this, God, you want to make God laugh, tell me your plans. So as I was putting the show prep together for tonight's show, it's amazing how this kind of jumped out at me, and I feel a need to share it with you. Now, as we talked about in yesterday's show, I've always said that if you want to know what's really going on, watch and I'm not talking about the talking heads, not the guys on TV. And so, because those guys don't make the money in the market or in the economy, they make the money talking about it. That old saying, those that do, those that think they know how to do, teach. And that's what these guys are doing. Very rarely will you see a commentator in the financial markets. They might have their small investments, but I'm not talking, they don't have billions. That's right, I said it, billions. They don't have billions of dollars in the market. They talk about, look at what those commentators, and one of the things that I've always said, and I'm going to stress this to you because I think it's very important. It's not what's being said that's important, it's what they're not saying. And the other part of it, too, is when you look at these commentators, who are these commentators referring to, or when they're talking about so-and-so moved so-and-so from the hedge fund, or did this or did that? Those are the individuals you need to be looking at. So I couldn't think of a more suitable canary than Mr. George Soros himself. I mean, if there's anybody that's plugged in not only to the economy, but is also plugged into this administration and their economic policies, it would be George Soros, right? It's not going to be the Koch brothers. That's for a different party when they come into office. But George Soros. So as we discussed in yesterday's show, Mr. Soros, to the tune of $1.3 billion, executed a lot of put options. Now, I'm not going to rehash the Economics 101 and give you what that means, but basically, in a nutshell, that means that he's betting against the market. In other words, he is anticipating a huge market downturn. Now, this is George Soros. This is an individual who is got the pulse. You don't make that kind of money. Now, granted, lying, cheating, stealing, probably murder. I probably shouldn't say that. Don't know if he committed, but I'm sure there's some nefarious dealings going on with Mr. Soros. You know, you don't get to that level unless you got a ton of skeletons in your closet, and probably a whole graveyard in your closet. But we'll talk about that probably some other day if I'm still around after just saying that. But, you know, he is betting. He has moved his positions almost 154% in the fourth quarter into a put option, which, like I said, he is betting that the market goes negative, right? Now, the other thing, too, is that, you know, we're seeing a lot of economic policies. We're seeing inflated numbers. We're seeing inflation. Go to your grocery store. You know, of course, the government's going to tell you, oh, there's no inflation. None whatsoever. No, there's no inflation. What are you talking about? Oh, really? Went to the grocery store the other day, and a loaf of bread that used to cost me $1 to $1.29 now costs $2.29 to $2.49. A gallon of milk that used to cost me $1.70 now is $3.49. A carton of eggs that used to cost me 99 cents is $2.35. A can of chicken noodle soup that used to cost me 59 cents to 75 cents is now $1.59. No inflation. No. None whatsoever. By what I just said, that is inflation. Where your dollar doesn't buy what it used to buy. The cost of products inflate. They go up. And a lot of that has to do with all the pumping of the currency in the U.S. economy. See, the dollar is just like any other precious item. If diamonds, great example, diamonds are expensive because of their rarity. Gold is expensive because of its rarity and its luster, its beauty. Now, there's other, believe it or not, there's other minerals that are more expensive because they're rarer, not as beautiful. But that is that's just economics. And so when you pump, if you got, we'll use the diamond analogy because a lot of people will understand this. If you got a few diamonds, right, they're worth a lot of money. Now, if you go out to your local beach and that sand, every grain of sand is a diamond, what do you think that diamond's going to be worth? Not a whole lot. So in the currency markets, you got a double whammy. Number one, our currency is not based on any tangible item. It's based on the good faith and credit of the United States. Well, I think we've already proven that can't trust us, can't trust the government. Can't trust them. So there goes your faith, your good faith, and the credit. We've been downgraded, so our credit rating is, now compared to other countries, we're still pretty good, but we're nowhere near the credit worthiness of someone else. We're like the shopkeeper in a depressed neighborhood. We're still in a depressed neighborhood. Yeah, we might have stuff on our shelves and everything, but we're still in a depressed neighborhood. And that's what we are in conjunction to the world global economy. There are better neighborhoods. But in our neighborhood, I guess we're okay. But going back to George Soros, he these put options. He is betting on the market to go down. And we're seeing this time and time again. We're seeing foreign countries disinvesting in the U.S. economy. See, Walmart, this is the funny thing. You see these ads for Walmart? You see these ads for Walmart? Oh, we're going to put $250 billion back in America. Here they are, and they want everybody to stand up and applaud them. Let me kind of explain. Let me kind of explain this to you. I mean, I'm not against their $250 million. Don't get me wrong, but don't stand up, as my grandmother said, don't break your arm patting yourself on the back too quickly there. And let me explain to you why. See, they know that there's going to be a huge shakeup in China. They know that the Chinese government is tired of carrying our debt. They know that. They know that China has opened up other markets, and they don't need the good old US of A anymore to buy their products. Their trade negotiations with foreign countries have surpassed that of the United States. The China knows that. Walmart knows that. So Walmart is now coming back to the United States, supposedly, not out of kindness or compassion, but out of economic sense. And we'll talk about that when we get back from the break.
Thousands of fellow patriots with Patriot FB Radio. Email advertise@patriotfb.com for more details. Get involved. Support Stone Anthony for President. www.stoneanthony2016.com. Put a real American in the White House. For all your prepping needs, visit our friends at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com or call 208-615-6331. 208-615-6331.
I had PTSD. Once I was back from Iraq, I was distant from everybody in my family. We had a reunion of our unit, and you'd hear these spouses say, "Is your husband doing that? My husband's doing that too. I thought it was just us." And really understanding that, hey, this is a common experience.
I learned more to listen to what he was saying, and that made it easier for me to understand where his pain was coming from.
Warriors should know that resources are available. Learn more at realwarriors.net.
Tucker boys are cooking down in Carolina. People down in Florida can't be still when old Leonard Skinner's picking down in Jacksonville. People down in Georgia come from near and far to hear Richard Best picking on that red guitar. So gather round, chill and be down. Well, just get down, chill and get loud. Well, you can be loud, yeah, and be proud.
You're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. I am your host, and that's Mr. Charles Daniel, the Charles Daniel Band. South's going to do it again. I play that song because, I actually think the saving grace to this great nation is going to be found below the Mason-Dixon line. I don't know. We'll see. But getting back to our topic, like I said earlier, right before we went off the break, we were talking about, Walmart is now telling everybody, their advertisements are saying, oh, we're going to bring $250 billion back in, we're going to get American factories running again. Well, that's because they know in the near term that they're not going to be able to buy their products on the cheap like they were over in China. They also know that they've actually driven prices down in the United States, especially labor prices. So now they can come back to the United States and give that factory worker a job and pay them minimum wage. And, of course, you got the president, the $10 minimum wage, and we'll talk about the 500,000 jobs that's going to cost and the added inflation that's going to cost. This president just doesn't get it. I raise everybody's salary, and thus everybody does better. And that's not the case because once again they're just going to be adding inflation. Ask Germany. Germany ran into a hyperinflation issue when they started pumping money. When a government starts pumping money into the economy, that is a symbol or a sign. And the reason why it wasn't so damning on this go-around is that the money that the QE, the quantitative easing that the government was pumping into the economy actually wasn't going in to the economy per se. It was going, but it was going to the bankers so that they can invest it into the stock market. That's why your stock market is at 16,000, 15, 16,000. And everybody else on Main Street is still trying to figure out how they're going to pay their electric bill. They didn't have a direct infusion. Now and you got to remember that the Fed chair Bernanke was an expert. He studied that. So he said, he devised a plan. He devised a plan in which he can inject money into the economy but not actually cause hyperinflation. And that's how he did it. He got the money to his cronies, the people, Wall Street and the Lehman Brothers and all that. He got the money to those guys, the banking institutions. So he was able to infiltrate or to inject income or money into those areas. But it didn't come down to us, and thus it really didn't truly cause a hyperinflation. Well, now you're starting to see the hyperinflation. It's starting to come around. The bankers know it. Why do you think these bankers are jumping out buildings? I actually heard a banker today on a talking head talk about, well, if it wasn't for all the regulation, these guys wouldn't fit. Well, you know what? If they wouldn't be breaking the law, they did it to themselves with their hedging their assets, their bank assets. Another story, another night. Talk about that as we uncover more and more of that information. But getting back to the topic tonight before Mr. Stone Anthony joins us here in the second hour is the fact that, Walmart, trust me, Walmart's a business. Their job is to make money. They made that perfectly clear. When Mr. Sam Walton passed away and his kids took it over, they have one goal and one goal only, and that's to make as much money as they possibly can for them and their shareholders. That's their job. Can't fault them. They're doing their job. So they're not bringing these manufacturing jobs back to the United States. What they're doing is they're protecting their assets. They know that things are changing in China. They know that the culture, the friendliness towards American companies and American exceptionalism is starting to wane. They know that China built their empire on us, building products for us. Well, they don't need us anymore. They funded, like any good investor, they funded us until they got what they wanted. Now that they have it and they don't need it anymore, you're going to see a pullback. And you're starting to see that. So when you hear companies talking about coming back to the good old US of A, they're not doing it out of the social injustice that they create. They're doing it because it's economically feasible in the long run. That's why they're doing it. They have, in effect, lowered the minimum wage or the standard of living here in the United States. And they know that. They know that. But as I talk to you tonight, I want to share some troubling news. And it was only a matter of time. And, like Jesus said to this gentleman, I sent you a truck, a boat, a helicopter. I gave you the weatherman. I gave you all the signs. Well, this is one more sign for you, America. China's second largest amount ever of U.S. Treasury in December, and guess who comes to the rescue? Sold. China is now we heard rumblings that China was going to offload American debt. When China actually in their capital in their cash reserves actually has more money now than they've ever had. So China has more money laying around than they've ever had. In which, China has, so it's not like they don't have the money. They have more cash laying around than ever. Well, China just offloaded $48 billion in paper. Yep. So not only are they not investing, but now they're selling the debt. They're selling the note. So they're like your bank on your mortgage. They just sold it to another market. And that's happening, like I said, when China's FX reserves soared to an all-time high and when China has gobs of square cash lying around and not investing in U.S. paper, and that should be quite troubling. They are disinvesting. Now, we've told you this. We've told you this. And Japan is following suit. Japan also dropped American holdings by $4 billion in December. So now you're seeing the pullback. And that's a signal, because as our government passes budget ceiling increases, and they don't have the revenues to cover the expenses, they have to borrow it. Well, the problem is they can't borrow it. Now, where are they borrowing it? They're getting it from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is just printing it. And now they're blindly printing it. In other words, there is no other security backing it up, except for the good faith and credit of the United States, which we know is already tarnished. So now, like I said, you do what you want to do. But I am telling you, part of our mission here at Patriot FB, this show and AVN, American Voice Now, and J.J. McCarty's show and the Average Joe show and Resurrect the Republic show that we do, is to educate you and to wake you up. And I know that, people don't have a ton of money. The average American, 90% of America, is about a month away from bankruptcy, living paycheck to paycheck. But I'm telling you, whatever money you have in your bank, you need to take it out and you need to buy things that you would use anyways. Food. Join our friends. I don't get paid any more money for telling you to go to Mountain View Off-Grid Living and get your storable food. I don't get paid. I'm not, if they do $1 million, I'm not going to get paid any more, any less. I'm not. And as we had the conversation yesterday, a lot of people are like, oh, buy gold, buy silver. Well, the reality of it is, buy food. You can't eat gold and silver. Now, that gold and silver, when there's no bread on the shelves, yeah, it's going to take you a silver coin to buy a loaf of bread. So why don't you buy the bread now or buy the materials now that you need? Wheat, yeast. You can get that all at Mountain View Off-Grid Living. Get out there. Talk with Sue. She'll work with you. She'll tell you what you need to get you guys going. And, I'm just telling you, you got money sitting in the bank account, obviously you got to pay your mortgage, you got to pay your car payment or whatever. But if you have any other disposable income that's sitting in savings, it's losing money. Every tick, tock, every time that clock ticks, you're losing a little bit more. That money has less value. Every morning when you wake up, that dollar is worth less than it was when you went to bed. So, buy your food now. You're going to need food, right? You're going to have to eat. Get your food. Get storable food. And the reason why I'm a big fan of storable food, it'll stay. And the storable food that's out there, the stuff that Sue sells, I mean, it's food. I mean, you come to my house and you eat it, you would never know. The canned meats and dehydrated vegetables and stuff, get out there. There's no reason. There's none whatsoever. And you're not going to lose money. You're actually going to make money because say I am wrong. Say I'm completely wrong. I missed it. Guess what? You still have food. These aren't MRE. I want to stress this to you. This is food that you can cook with. And like I said, I cook with it now. Sandy and I do use it to cook with. And I'll tell you, you would never know. I have friends who have had barbecue and stuff. They never knew. Of course, we do our venison. Now, for all those hunters out there who think, well, I'll just hunt. Yeah. When the cities start emptying of hungry people, there isn't going to be a rodent within 1,000 miles of you. And the second part that you guys need to be doing is then after you have secured your food, and don't forget about your animals. Buy some food for them. You don't have to buy a year's supply, but buy some because they'll eat scrap. They'll eat, dogs will eat whatever. But don't forget about them. But buy the things that you're going to use. And like I said, it doesn't hit the fan. I'm completely wrong. You still have the food and you still bought it cheaper than it's going to be because, prices are always going to go up. They're not ever going to come back down. They don't ever. In the history of man, prices of commodity, they always go up. They never come back down. Just telling you. Don't be that person that's sitting there asking God, asking Jesus, why have you forsaken me? He's given you a message. And I'll be the first one to tell you, this show, what we do here, what we do at Patriot FB, and the success that we've had is for a reason. It has nothing to do with me, JJ, Michael, Thomas, Joe, Don, Cowboy Logic. Has nothing, it's all divine. There's a message here. We're just the vehicle. And I'm telling you, I'm the boat. The floodwaters are coming. You're standing in them. It's at your knees. And that's the message that I have for you. Now, we got Stone Anthony's going to be joining us here at the top of the hour. And so I'm sure we're going to cover a lot of topics as far as that goes on. But I do want to talk about buyer's remorse. Since we're on the economy, let's talk about buyer's remorse. You know what buyer's remorse is? I remember one time when I was a young man, I had a Ford Thunderbird, not the nice Thunderbird, but the slick kind of the modern Thunderbirds. And at that age, you're into things, right? We're into things. And at that time, that was when the stereos, the stuff that I can't stand now, but when the stereos were big. Had to have the booming stereo as we played Aaron Tipton there. Nothing wrong with the radio. And I remember, I went to an audio store and I got the CD changer and the big old speakers and all that stuff and got them in. It sounded great. Don't get me wrong. I had a rocking car. But after I had to pay, because I learned that was my first foray into credit, and as I had to pay that bill off, I needed help from my parents, my mom. My dad didn't want anything to do with it. Actually, he was pretty furious. But my mom, she helped me. But I'll tell you, talk about buyer's remorse. It all sounded great until I had to make the payment on the dang thing. And then I had buyer's remorse. And, that's what a lot of us in America, not me, but that's what a lot of Americans are now feeling about this president, this administration. 71% buyer's remorse. Economists poll finds 71% of the Obama supporters regret voting for his reelection. 71% of the American voters that voted for President Obama is now regretting the fact that they voted for him. I don't know why. He didn't hide anything. Now, he lied to you, but we were telling you all along that he was lying to you. And because of your public school education and the dumbing down, you guys couldn't figure it out on your own. And I'm sorry, I'm going to take that dig at you for those that voted for him. Because, see, part of being responsible is to realize when you're wrong and to accept responsibility with that. You can't stand there and act like an adult, but yet deny the fact that you were led. And the reality of it is that you didn't do your homework. So this big F that you got, you deserve. Now, you can continue on and complain and talk about how the teacher or whoever didn't teach you right, or the media, misled you. But the reality of it is, in today's day and age with technology, there's no excuse. The signs were there. See, but as you were sitting there giggling with your friends, all giddy and everything, and making fun of Mr. Mitt Romney and when he made his comment about 43%, but you're finding out that that's actually true. When when Mitt Romney told you, and I'm not a fan of Mitt Romney either, but I'm just saying that the signs were there. You could have come up with your own conclusions. But when Mitt Romney was saying, well, yeah, Detroit's going to fail. When Mitt Romney, like I said, I'm not touting him. I wasn't a fan of Mitt Romney either. I'm just saying there's no excuse for it. And so now you're at 71%. Now, we're going to see who the true adults are. Because the true adults are going to stand up and say, yeah, I voted for him, and I'm sorry, and it's never going to happen again, and I'm going to do my research on the next candidate. I'm going to find out what they're all about. And we're going to give you a candidate here at the top of the hour that, I'll tell you, what he says, you can take to the bank. Mr. Stone Anthony. And there's other candidates like him, and we're going to have them on the show running for different offices. I just talked to a strategist earlier today, and we're going to get them on the show. We're going to get them on all of the shows as they bring them in and introduce themselves to you and our audience. But it's your fault. Don't sit and blame the media. Don't sit and blame that, I was lied to. You knew he was a liar. We've been telling you that from day one. Now, I will give you a little bit of credit. I'll cut you a little bit of slack. We told you what books you needed to study. Now, we did tell you that. Now, we didn't give you the chapter, verse, and text. But we told you, all the information you needed were in these books. Maybe we should hold your hand. I don't know. But you walk around driving your BMWs or your cars and having your mortgages and stuff, acting like adults. So we just treat you like adults. I mean, if you want to be spoon-fed, then okay, then stop acting like or pretending to be adults. And we'll start over. It's part of what the show's about. But 71% now have buyer's remorse with this president, with the president of the United States. So that they regret voting for him. And it's going to increase even more. And of course, you would hear more voices. You would hear more people complaining about it. But the minute you do, the race card's thrown out. And let me be perfectly clear. Before someone accuses me of being racist, I don't care what gender you are. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care what's the color of your skin. I can care less. I can care less. What I do care about is when you stand there and you tell the American people that they're going to have 5 days to look at any bill, that you're going to clean up the lobbyists, when you're going to make them part of and you're going to display the process on C-SPAN, and you're going to do all, and the minute you get in office, you forget all about it. When you send form letters to the men and women, to the families of men and women who have paid the ultimate price, the ultimate sacrifice for this nation's freedom, form letters, Mr. President. When you do all of those things, I have issue with you. I do. When you stand there and you tell people, the American people, see, you're in a position of authority. People, believe it or not, because they're dumbed down and they're taught in schools that you're superior to them. I don't know how many times I heard that. Bill Clinton's a Rhodes Scholar, and I heard that, you're Harvard educated and you're so brilliant. So when you sit there and and then you flat out lie to us, oh, the GAO, and we're not going to add any money to the deficit. No one's going to lose their job. And the way that this plan is structured, if you like your doctor, you get to keep your doctor. And when you throw out those lies, and when those lies are called on and everything, then you say you're not culpable. Well, I can't control what the free market does. Really, Mr. President? It's not what you said a while back. If I remember correctly, I mean, isn't the doctors when you made that statement, wasn't the doctors and the insurance company, weren't they part of the free market? Now, I know your intentions, your plan is to make them part of a government-controlled socialistic healthcare system. I know that's what your goal is. So why don't you just cut to the chase and show some kahunas for once and come out and tell the American people the truth? Might not like the truth, but at least we know we're being told the truth, because that's where you're driving. That's where your administration, that's where the New World Order is pushing. See, we have your playbook, Mr. President. We read it in the pages in the Agenda 21 manual. Yeah, in Brazil. It's no secret. We know that health care in the United States was supposed to be transformed by 2014. That's what was dictated in the Agenda 21 that you subscribed to, and the administration prior to you subscribed to as well. We know that, Mr. President. We have your playbook. And not only do we have your playbook, but we also know how you're going to execute the plan. Because we have that book too, Rules for Radicals, Sal Alinsky. So not only do we know where you're driving us towards, but we also know how you're going to get us there. And the first thing in the book, besides the evil quote to the dedication to Satan, Lucifer himself, get out there and read the book, America. Sal Alinsky, Mr. President Obama's hero, his mentor, his guider, his teacher, his rabbi, dedicated his book to Satan himself. Just want to let you know that. It's in the book. Don't take my word for it. It's there. But, I'm going to blow by this break because I think this is important. Stone will be joining us here in a few minutes. And, but I just want to finish up this thought with you. We have the playbook. We know what they're doing and we know how they're going to get us there. And if you think Obama's scary, you ain't seen nothing yet with Hillary Clinton. You ain't seen nothing yet with Hillary Clinton. It's a leapfrog approach. They are digging us deeper and deeper in the mire of socialism, of government control, of all things that are truly evil. When we get back from the break, we will have Mr. Stone Anthony joining us. But give us a call, 1-800-580-4870. That's 1-800-580-4870. We'll have both lines open for tonight's show. Love to talk with you. I'm sure we're going to talk about a few things with Mr. Anthony. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back from the break, we'll cover more news stories, topics with presidential candidate 2016, Mr. Stone Anthony. You're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. Join us on the web at www.patriotfb.com.
Get involved. Get involved. Support Stone Anthony for President. www.stoneanthony2016.com. Put a real American in the White House. For all your prepping needs, visit our friends at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com or call 208-615-6331. 208-615-6331.
We need a hero, someone to save us from ourselves and our own self-destruction. God only knows we need help. Looking for a hero, someone who cares about the future, not about themselves, but about the idea of America. We need a hero, someone to show us the way. We need a hero who speaks for the people and what we have to say. We still believe this land of the free is still America. We still believe in the land of the free, and we need a miracle. You know this freedom is anything but free. What we have here depends on those who will fight for what they believe. When we stand together, there's nothing that we can't achieve. This nation of people standing as one in the name of liberty. We need a hero, someone to show us the way. We need a hero who speaks for the people and what we
You're listening to the Midnight Patriot radio show and podcast. That was Madison Rising. Join them on the web at www.madisonrising.com. But right now, we have joining us on the phone line Mr. Stone Anthony. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. That's your theme song, by the way. I'm going to get with the guys at Madison and see that when you run for office, we're going to have an intro song for you. When you hit the stage and all that, that's going to be your theme song.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, we like those guys. I've been busy all day putting my put options in, on the stock market today.
I'm telling you. Now, I'm not one to advise anybody on how they should trade the market, but yeah, you do what Mr. George Soros is doing. I mean, you're not worth $4 billion and wanted by a couple countries unless you're doing something right. That's the way it works in the New World Order.
No crap. Hey, your buddy Steve had a couple questions. He's been texting me on the message board there, so I thought we'd start there, if that's all right, unless you had something.
No, I definitely want to
go. He wants to know what we're going to do with the people that, when we trim down our government, those people that we put out of work, what are we going to do for them? You know what I'm talking about?
I got you.
Okay. Well, in my position paper on the jobs and manufacturing back to the United States, one of the statements that I had put out early on was that if you work, for several of these agencies, like the EPA or the IRS or the Department of Homeland Security, specifically the TSA, you should be going back to school now and learning how, some sort of construction trade, project management, site superintendents, this type of thing, maybe even heavy equipment operators. Because, we are going to go after the IRS pretty quick when we get into office, and we're going to trim that office down quite a bit. I mean, EPA doesn't protect anything. They just create roadblocks and cliffs for, folks to have to jump off of. So I'm not sure that the effectiveness or the necessity for them is there.
Well, the TSA, they can become security guards. They can guard the factories. They can walk around with their little lock boxes and guard our factories.
Well, since they've been put into our transportation system, they've certainly got a reputation over about the last 8 or 9 or 10 years as not being part of the friendly skies. That's for sure. And now I hear they want to put them on buses and trains.
Oh. Yeah, I was actually I commute to Chicago quite a bit, and let me turn it up here a little bit. When I would go to Chicago, every once in a while we would have TSA agents on the train with us. That was a year, 2 years ago. That's very common in most metropolitan cities where they literally have guys in their little blue raincoats that say TSA on there, and they'll say TSA inspector. I don't know what they're inspecting, to be honest with you. I except us. But,
well, after what they did to that police chief out in Arizona or New Mexico a couple of weeks ago, I think that was a straw for me that broke the camel's back. You go to the airport to get on the airplane to fly somewhere. I mean, it's a stressful situation anyway. I mean, you're strapping a jet engine between your legs and you're flying at 40,000 feet. I mean, it's a stressful situation. So the last thing you want is for some jerk to give you a hard time, But yet, we're all aware of the easy pass that they've given to some of these foreign folks.
Oh yeah.
So it's got to be a little disheartening to people that are subjected to that kind of stuff. And who goes to the airport to have their body, a cavity search? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And So the girl that came through there with her bikini on, I certainly, I support that. I hope that the Canadians coming in don't wear their Speedos,
The Italians from the Riviera? Is that what?
Yeah, exactly. But, I just think we've taken things to the extreme. I mean, we do need security. We do need to be vigilant. We need, much of, but how did we do it prior to 9/11? It seemed like, we did just fine, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing, I don't know. I mean, maybe we ought to ask Bill Ayers, since he's an expert at terrorism, and I'm sure the president's got his phone number. We can just call him, hey, Bill, because during the 60s and 70s, the underground, the Weathermen were a domestic terrorist group, which as we all know, Bill Ayers was a part of and an organizer of, and his wife, and now they're professors at the University of Chicago, teaching their crap. But the reality of it is
that's Bill Ayers. I mean, but even in '93 when the first World Trade Center bombings, I mean, had they parked that van 20 feet closer to the column, we may have had a different result. But certainly the taped conversations that this gentleman did when he was talking with the FBI agents and everything. I mean, why are people ignoring that? I mean, that was clearly there was something not white in the rice there.
Well, and that's the thing, and a lot of Americans don't know this because they're not told. And of course, most Americans nowadays, you got to be told things. You can't figure them out on your own. There is very clear record that there were active investigations into these mosques where they were radicalizing everybody. And so they knew that the blind sheik, was a concern, and they, even Great Britain, MI5 said, but I'm a firm believer they just let it go, because the ultimate plan is to the ultimate plan is to get control of the American people. That's the plan. So how do you get control of the American people? You get them frayed. Because American people typically will, they'll cower in the corner. Most of them will, and they'll give away the right. I remember when 9/11 happened, and people that I never suspected to do this were sitting there going, well, we need the Patriot Act. We need, I don't have nothing to hide, so I don't care. So we need it. And it's like, well, you don't understand what this is going to look like in 10 to 20 years from now. And unfortunately, we're already seeing it 10 years later, 12 years later. But the thing is that
well, we got way off the track here with this. I just, we both agree that the TSA probably could use a little better management, and their mission statement should probably be rewritten. Well,
I'd like to hear you say we don't need the TSA. Go back to the security that was provided by the airlines.
Right.
I mean,
my point is we need to stop, terrorizing our own citizens to protect them from terrorism. Does that make any sense?
I got you.
Yeah.
So TSA's gone.
I mean, that's just one agency that I'm, yes. I mean, I've already said that Department of Homeland Security, as far as I'm concerned, is needs to be shuttered. It needs to be gone. Mm-hmm. We didn't really need that monstrosity of a bureaucracy when we already had, in our arsenal of national security, several agencies. So it's just, another typical government program where we double up and triple up on our different, agencies that are, doing different things. But anyway, so his question was basically, what do you do with these people? Well, what do we do with the millions of hundreds of, 50 million Americans that are currently out of work? I mean, they're just going to have to join, the workforce that's out of work right now. And as we, bring the jobs and manufacturing back to the United States, they're just, they're going to have to come off of the government payroll and get out in the private sector and compete for jobs just like, everybody else is. Yeah. The difference is we're going to be providing, a tremendous amount of opportunities so that people can, choose what, works best for them. But, we don't need 3.8 million federal workers. We just don't need it.
Well, and that's the other thing, a lot of people got to look, I mean, the numbers, I mean, we're obviously having less children in the United States now. You have more people who are going to be retiring in the near future. So your pool of eligible workers, when you fire up, I mean, manufacturing, as we're talking about, as you're talking about, a huge proponent of, and getting America making things again, there will be a place for them in this economy. I mean, it's just, I mean, we have
upper level management, design, R&D. There'd be. They're just going to have to, they're going to have to retool themselves, just like the government keeps telling these American citizens to do. Every time they shut down a parts plant or a steel plant or some, farmer or something like that, they're telling the American citizens, hey, we'll provide you with some training, we'll re-educate you. So it's, we're just going to utilize those same services against the, the government workers that are going to be out of a cushy job for the rest of their life or whatever they want to talk about it. But I mean, they're getting rid of seasoned professionals out of the government now anyway. And they can take one guy making $150,000 a year at a GS 14, 15, and replacing them with 3 or 4 $30,000 a year clerks. When these guys retire. And, with Obama being elected twice, I mean, government workers have disappointed me anyway, so I'm not necessarily a big fan of them anyway, especially around the Washington, D.C. area. I mean, they voted for him in large numbers.
Of course.
Because, they were worried about their jobs,
Yeah, of course they were. I mean, of course. I mean, I can't. So, anyway. I mean, I can't think of one government agency that I'm actually going. I mean, every government agency needs. Even I was listening to the FDA, the head of the FDA, and I'm like, I understand the purpose of the FDA, but I don't understand your mission. I understand why we need to have an FDA, but I don't know
mission.
But I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's the USDA. I mean, they have one inspector for every 100 million pounds of food or something like that. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. But yet, if you look at the budget and the line items, I mean, I think we could do something better with $18 billion or whatever their line item is. But again, I mean, we can sit here and talk about all this crazy stuff all night long, but it's going to require us sitting down and having these different agencies, once we're there, justify their existence. Okay, I mean, us simply saying, hey, this particular thing is not needed or not required or whatever, but they're going to have to justify, their existence when we get there.
Yeah.
And again, keep in mind, Congress controls the money, so, we have to work with them. And I heard you say something prior to me coming on where you talked to some strategist today about whatever, but, if you bring another presidential, candidate, into the Midnight Patriot, I think it would be great, if he and I can have a conversation, because I'm not gonna attack another patriot that's trying to right this country. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm gonna attack the Hillarys and the Ted Cruzes and the asshats that have been in politics for so many years, and, in my opinion, are to blame for what's happened. But Jeff, if you bring a congressman or a senator on your show and you want them to debate me that's running for president and they've been in office for I don't know how long, they're probably not going to like Stone Anthony.
I don't care.
Because the questions I'm going to ask them are not going to be questions they're going to be comfortable answering.
I'm not. No. And I don't. Like I said, the strategists. These are a lot of local guys and stuff that need to get out there. But the way I look at it, it's my. Look, Stone, I am very, very confident in your ability to articulate and get right to the point. I mean, if they want to come on here and you guys want to debate, hey, I'll give you the forum. I don't care. Let you guys go at it. I'll put myself on mute and but no, I don't.
No, you won't.
Yeah, I mean, put myself on mute and I'll just talk to myself and listen like a good citizen, and then pick and choose. And you're absolutely correct, and that's one of the things I like about you is that it is what it is. You have that attitude is what it is. What you see is what you get. There is no facade. There is no green screen here with you, and you'll debate anybody, and that's fine. But these are all don't worry. These are all don't worry in a couple things. Obviously, we'll get you guys in here debating, but the thing is, these are all
I'm not worried.
Local politicians.
I was worried. I was talking about for your sanity and for their, for their sake. If they're a patriot and they're trying to right this country, then we're going to get along just fine. Is what I'm saying. But if you bring a Ted Cruz or a Mike Lee on the show and you want to have me ask them questions and answer questions from them, it was actually get into it, because my opinion is they're there now. Okay, they have the opportunity to fix things now, but they're not.
Yeah.
And so those 435 congressmen and 100 senators over there, they're not filing charges against this criminal president. They've allowed him to be in that office for nearly 6 years, and nobody has still seen his official certified copy of his gosh darn birth certificate. Okay?
Yep.
Listen, I'm not saying he is or isn't an American citizen. I'm just simply saying, give me the damn proof, and then we can go from there. Okay? Yep. If you can tell me where two, I guess it would be four, maybe six. You know more about airplanes than I do. Show me where the 12-foot titanium, 9-inch in circumference or diameter drive shafts from those jet engines that hit those two buildings. Tell me where those drive shafts are. In relation to everything else about 9/11 that happened in New York, and then we can have a conversation going forward.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened to 400,000 tons of steel. How did it just crumble like it was dust?
What? I got one better for you. Just show me the freaking videotape that you supposedly have of the airplane going into the building. Now
listen, see, you just muddied the water. You're talking about the Pentagon. I'm talking about New York. I'm saying... We've got, yes, I would love to see the video that I know exists also, but, tell me where those titanium drive shafts are, whether it's at the Pentagon or in Shanksville or in New York City. Those are indestructible. Do you understand?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt, though. I mean, Stone, we saw the airplanes hit the Twin Towers, both airplanes, and I don't think there's any doubt that what airplanes they were. Now, the question is like you said, the way that the building collapsed, when you have 235 structural engineers, college professors who say that building didn't collapse the way that they're saying it collapsed. I agree with you on that one. I'm not doubting, though, that airplanes hit that building. Airplanes hit those buildings. You saw the videotape. I don't need to see the drive shafts.
I saw a feed of a videotape that all 5 networks were sucking off of, which has never happened in the history, of broadcasting. Why on that particular day was NBC, Fox, CBS, NBC, whatever the other ones, why were they all coming off the same feed?
Yeah,
explain that to me like I'm a 2-year-old.
Yeah, I don't know. But like I said,
it doesn't matter. I'm not here to debate 9/11. Yeah. I'm just simply saying, how do you guys come to the conclusion of what happened if the facts that you're presenting to us don't make any sense? That's all.
Even their testimony, if you look at the 9/11 and hearings and everything, the testimonies don't gel. They didn't listen. They didn't take testimony from individuals that were eyewitnesses that clearly said, I was in the basement. I heard explosions in the basement, not upstairs, not anywhere, in the basement. I heard explosions. We were knocked to the floor in the basement. And so, yeah, I agree. You're absolutely right. But my question is and today it was funny that you mentioned Ted Cruz, so I'm just going to bring it up. When I was talking to the strategist, I know he's a big fan of Ted Cruz, and so I had to enlighten him a little bit about, and he was like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no. Just do your own research. Let me give you a few things to look up. Just put it into Google. It's not hard to do, and then you can come to your own. And I'm sorry to, to dishearten someone, but yesterday, I don't know if you listened. I know you were on another show. I know you're busy with your campaign and stuff. But yesterday, I made the challenge out there. I said, give me a name of one politician, just one, that is actually a legitimate, true American patriot. Just give me one name.
There's only one that I can give you, and I know you're not asking me the question, but I'll give you here. That's Senator Gowdy from South Carolina. I mean,
who's that?
I want to say I don't know what his first name is. It's Gowdy, Gawdy. He's the guy that's been questioning, everybody about, Benghazi and this type of thing.
Sure. All right.
He definitely will have a job in my administration. Maybe as Attorney General.
Yeah.
That's how much I think of the guy. He's a definitely, but that's the only one. There is nobody else.
Yeah, I can't think. And of course, everybody. Oh, Rand Paul. Well, let me kind of tell you some things about Mr. Rand Paul. Ron Paul. Well, Ron Paul's no longer in Congress, but let me tell you some things about him. Like I said, it's crazy. It's like my grandmother used to say: you sit in a barber chair long enough, you're going to get a haircut, and that's just the nature of Washington D.C. And that's why we need outsiders. We need people that aren't going to be sitting in the barber chair in Washington D.C. And that's just the way it is.
Absolutely. But anyway, we've gone way off the subject of what Mr. Rosenthal was asking. But it's difficult to sit here as a Monday morning quarterback and say this is exactly what we're going to do. The only thing I can tell you is that we have a goal.
Yeah.
We want to downsize the federal government by at least half.
Yeah.
Okay, and keep in mind, there's a duplicative process 50 times over in each one of the states. We have these states are going to be taking a lot more of the responsibility, as they should. From a welfare standpoint, from a food inspection standpoint, from a corporation standpoint, states are going to start taking a little bit more control of their own destiny. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
So we're not going to need all of that federal government. Welfare, as we all know it, is going to be gone. Should have never been I'm not saying it should not have never been a federal program, but it has certainly outlived its usefulness. And I think that the amount of money that the American citizens are popping into this, this bureaucracy is just way out of hand at this point.
Yeah.
Obama wouldn't be able to be doing the things that he's doing right now if his predecessors hadn't, and I'm talking going way back to, maybe even Roosevelt. These programs, I don't think were, designed or enacted to be, lifetime entitlements. These were to give people a leg up, not a lifestyle, not a career.
Well, the Social Security, the whole premise behind the Social Security, as much as you want to say, well, it's an entitlement program. The Social Security and all that was funded.
Don't muddy Social Security. I wasn't talking about.
No, but what I'm saying is that you talked about these programs, and what I'm trying to explain. A lot of people will now, you mentioned Eisenhower, Roosevelt. I mean, some of those programs were legitimate programs. It wasn't until the hucksters got in and started stealing from those coffers and screwed it all up.
Okay. Well, folks, if you're listening, I was not speaking of nor mentioning Social Security.
That was me.
A totally different subject. That's you work an entire lifetime. You've paid into a system. I mean, that money belongs to you to begin with.
I agree.
Okay. Welfare is not a situation where you're paying into it. From the time that you're 18 to the time that you're 65.
Yes, and and to your point, when welfare was enacted, it was a system in which people would get back to work. The mentality was different. I know people who were on welfare who were shamed by it, even to modern era, and they did everything possible to get off of welfare. It was not a staple income. It was not an income that was meant. And you're absolutely correct. It's gotten completely distorted and corrupted like most of these programs.
Right. Well, if you had a corporation like Walmart that's got 1.2 or 1.3 million employees, right? The answer is yes.
Yep.
And you got a federal government that's got somewhere between, I don't even know how many employees they have, 2.8, 3.6 or something like that, plus an additional 10 million contractors that work directly with the federal government.
Yep.
That's a pretty large payroll to make every week.
Well, even I don't know if you heard this, but Walmart actually said that the reason why their sales are down is because the government cut welfare spending. They actually attributed their weak sales because of the $39 a month that they cut in the SNAP program. Walmart said that they actually lost money because of that.
Well, they lost $39 per recipient. So God bless them.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it have been better if that person had gone out and had a job where he could earn twice as much as that and spend twice as much of that at Walmart? So, listen, I can't imagine anybody in this country that's a patriot or that's got some common sense about them cannot see the writing on the wall. Yeah. If all of the jobs in this country, and I'm talking about the jobs that pay something now, I'm not talking about, flipping hamburgers here. That's a totally different, area of the thing. But, farming, big, huge farms, big, huge manufacturing plants. So those things are, they're leaving. They're not the big farms, but the manufacturing plants and things like that employ 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 people. They're gone.
Yeah. Well, the big
where's that
farms
money coming from? How are we replenishing our coffers? Well, we're not.
We're not. We're borrowing. And to your point though, even the farms though the family farm is pretty much gone.
Right.
They're all owned by the ADM or Monsanto and are controlled or because they these farmers bought into this high yield and everything and it's just crazy.
They can take 100,000 acres that might have taken 80 or 90 or 100 people to manage it, and they can now do it with probably half the staff because this type of thing.
Yeah.
But while that federal government, while the government system is maintained, how many people do you know that were affected by this sequester this past fall and summer?
I don't know anybody. Well, I take that back.
I knew a lot of people because I live in this particular area, but those people were freaking out, man.
Yeah.
They were devastated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. And they only had to take off 6 days.
Yeah. No, I can tell you what I say. I don't know anybody. Well, actually, that's not true. I actually worked for a company who had contracts with, did embassy work. But they were told a year ahead of time. Well, we knew about a year before the actual hammer came down and said that they're going to be cutting their workforce because, there's no longer any work there for you. So,
okay, well, that's contract. I'm talking about actual federal employees that were sequestered for, I think, over a 2 or 3 month period, just a total of 6 days.
Yeah.
That just threw such a monkey in the wrench that you...
Yeah, they had to take an extra... But you know what, though? I dealt with the ATF and different agencies during the sequester period, and basically, like I said, an agent that I would call to get approval on some paperwork that we were filling out or whatever because of the manufacturing side of it, they would tell you, I'm not going to be here Friday. So you say, okay, I'll call you Monday. Okay. So, I did know people, but to be honest with you,
the financial stuff. I'm talking about that their paychecks were lighter and they were they couldn't make.
Oh no, these weren't financial people. These were ATF. These were employees who lost a day or a day a month in their pay. But you asked me, it didn't affect me. I just called back on Monday. So then I asked the question: do we really need them there 5 days a week?
Well, then towards the end of that sequester period, then they did the government shutdown for 10 or 15 days. How many days was it?
15, but they all got paid back. And then they got their bonuses.
Right.
That's the part that irked me is the fact that number one, they were sequestered, and a lot of because of the sequester, A lot of their bonuses, cost of living increases were frozen. Their reviews were all frozen. Then after the shutdown, when they came back, they got the money for the 15 days they were off. They got that back paycheck. And then the majority of them got all of their cost of living increases as well.
Okay, well, I don't know anybody that got, reimbursed for the days that they were off. So,
they did.
That's good. No, that's good. But I'm not aware of anybody that did that. But
yeah.
But the whole reason I brought that up 5 minutes ago when we were talking about this was the federal government has become a corporation. It's become a monstrosity of a thing that it's just out of control.
Yes. No. And it is a corporation. I mean, that's, we were reading the 14th Amendment, Thomas, from Resurrected Republic, who's here at Patriot FB in the mornings, clearly states that. And one of the things that came out of the conversations I've had with him and doing my own research, I mean, we talked about the maritime flag. The American flag that has the gold fringe around it, that's the maritime flag, which denotes an American corporation.
So my point that I was trying to make was that when AT&T and JP Morgan and those guys, when they split up Standard Oil and stuff like that, was because they became a monopoly.
Yes.
Okay. What I want to do is I want to break the federal government up and put it back to where it belongs, into the 50 states in the union is what I want to do. So
yes.
That's where I was trying to go with that.
I got you. I mean, my thing is, I'm kind of, what's that one show, Tell Me Like I'm a 3-year-old. I just want the government to play by the same rules that it imposes on its people. If they look at us and say, oh, well, you got to retrain yourself, well, guess what? So do you. If they look at me and say, oh, well, you got to participate in Obamacare, well, guess what? So do you. Oh, well, if you got to do the My IRA, so do you. I mean, that's
why before I got into presidential politics, I mean, in the last election, when Romney was the going up against this guy, and people really lost out there, because there's a guy that knew how to take a look at a problem and come up with not only a solution that makes sense, but also that's financially, beneficial. Now, I can't tell you if it was going to be beneficial to the American citizens or not, because I don't know what kind of patriot he was. But when we do this kind of stuff, it's going to be, is it good for the American people? Is it good for the American citizens? And that will always be the basis for the decisions that we make.
Yeah.
So, when somebody asks me a question, well, how are you going to do this specifically, or how are we going to, what do we do with all these employees now that are gone from the federal government? Well, we're going to have to study that. We're going to have to sit down and figure that out when we figure out what, how big of a mess we've got on our hands.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you talk about Mitt Romney, and I want to say this. I'm not a fan. I wasn't a fan. There were some things that I didn't like about him either. But the reality of it is Mitt Romney built his life. They criticized him because of his hedge funds and his his companies that he belonged to, or that he owned. Well, the thing that they did not tout, or one thing you didn't hear in the media, and this tells you how the media was so biased in this, his companies were all about taking distressed companies and turning them around. That was that's what they did. They would come into a company that was failing, that would have declared bankruptcy or would have been out of business, and they came in, they bought the company, they took it over, and then they turned it around and made it profitable. I don't know. Sound familiar?
Who was the governor of New Jersey that lost $1 billion? And I don't mean lost it like he poorly invested. I mean he just physically lost $1 billion of that. New Jersey governor, what the hell was his name? He was found guilty.
Oh, the one that just got indicted?
Yeah.
Well, you got what, Cory Booker? Well, no, Booker's the one that ran against him.
Corzine.
Yep.
Wasn't his name Corzine?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. Yeah, Corzine was his name. So, he was a senator, and then maybe he was a congressman. Doesn't matter. That's the guy that we elected. Was the guy that loses $1 billion and can't tell you what happened to it.
Yeah.
You know, whereas if you'd have had a guy like Romney in there at the time, you know, he's not going to allow $1 billion to just be lost. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm not here campaigning for Romney. I'm just simply saying that, folks, we got exactly what we asked for because we stayed home and didn't go out and vote.
Yes.
I'm not saying me personally or you personally. I'm just simply saying we sent a community organizer. I mean, this guy was the guy that goes around and sells playground equipment. I'm talking about Barack Obama. You understand what I'm saying? And we put him in charge of the largest corporation in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
with $300 million.
Yeah, and my thing is, I didn't vote for him, but we are still culpable in the sense that did I do everything possible at the time, right. and I didn't. So, I'll be honest with you.
What I'm doing right now is I'm going to do everything that I can that's possible to educate people, to get them out to vote, and this type of thing. So, and I think you are too, and I think many other people are doing the same thing. So that's why when we first started talking tonight, and I said, look, you bring somebody on the show that's, you know, in his own ship, but he's sailing in the same direction as us, we're going to get along just great. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to call the guy a doo-doo head. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
Well,
I got you. I mean, we're all in this together. And it's kind of like the attitude I have with I've already been contacted by other sites like ours, and I'll tell you, some of the conversations have been, look, you know, I always do, look, I'm not here to compete with anybody. You know, we're here just to get the message out. And
what's their message to you?
Excuse me?
What are they saying to you? You said they contacted
I have some of them that have actually said, hey, look, this is what caused us to switch our servers is one of the sites was like, hey, look, we've been down this road. We have well over 100,000 users. This is what you need to do to be able to scale the system. So they were very, very helpful.
Oh, and supportive and helpful. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
But I've had others though who have come back and, you know, they view it's a competition, like we're stealing money from them or what. And I'm like, well, you know, our business model is it's not a business model. It's a social media network that we use to communicate and to promote it, and it's all driven by donations, not by, you know, by dollars. And like I said, though, I've had, you know, both, and I see that. I mean, you have these politicians, but I'll tell you this: the first politician that gets on here that just because you're competing for the same space and they have that attitude, that'll be the last time they're on the show, because we're all in this together.
You gotta let me interject some things in there, because what you're saying, you need to go on to a different topic, and that is, I'm not running for anything. I'm not running for president. What I'm asking the American people to do is hire me to do a job that desperately needs to be done. So, you know, you can call it campaign, you can call it running, but, you know, I'm all about trying to change a lot of the politics as usual bull crap. You know what I'm talking about? You know, I'm not going to say one thing to you and then turn around and say it on a different show, just something different to somebody else. People have got to know that the person they're sending to Washington to do the job is going to do the job and not just blowing smoke up their hinds.
Mm-hmm.
That's your cue.
That's my cue. I'm listening, man. I mean, it's funny. You and I have this conversation. We need to sit around, you know, at the table. I need to come out to the East Coast and pay you a visit. But no, you know, I agree. Well,
that's my plan. You know, I plan on going around the country, and I plan on visiting folks. And I want to sit down. I know you're coming with me. I want to sit down with people, and it can be, you know, just ask the questions. But once you hear the answer, if you have an opinion, or you have another idea, or you have something along the lines that can help it make it better, let's hear it.
Yeah.
But what we've been up against the last, a couple of days here now, it just seems like there's people coming out of the woodwork that are just, their medication is not strong enough, or it's out of date, or whatever, but it's not working anymore. and they're still drinking that Kool-Aid. They're still talking about Obama being, the guy that's going to turn this mess around. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Nah,
you can't be serious. And then they go right into their, we got Hillary coming in behind him, and she's going to finish up his job. And I'm saying she sure is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's setting them up, and she's going to knock them down as soon as she gets in office,
And I just said that right before you came on the air, is that, I'm a firm believer that, he's the setup guy, and her job is to, and she will. I mean, she has no.
Bush set it up pretty good too for Obama, and Obama set it up for her, and but us Patriots, we're not going to let that happen. No. We're done being played. You understand what I'm saying?
I'm with you. I am too.
I mean, and that's what been the topic here as far as where I'm trying to focus people right now, and that is, do you realize 38.2 or 38.6% of the population voted last election?
Yeah, which is depressing.
I mean, that is criminal.
Oh, it's 53
horrible. Million people voted for Barack Obama.
Yeah.
49 million people voted for Mitt Romney. Now, listen, guys, we've got to get that number up somewhere above 50%, if not to 75%, because then we truly have a republic that, we have a democracy. The democratic process does work at that point. I mean, people get out, their voice is heard.
And that's my commitment. I mean, their whole strategy is based upon those numbers that you just spouted. That 34% is only going to vote. So if you want to mess their strategy up, if we can get 60% of the American people to go out there and vote, even though that is not enough, but if that will destroy their strategy.
Our new T-shirt says, "I'm one of the 75%," because you've heard of the 3%ers and this type of thing, but 3% is not going to do it, folks. I mean, I understand that that's for, the revolution and that kind of stuff. It only took 3% of the population to make it happen, but, this is 237 years later.
Yeah.
So we have to understand that things are slightly different in the way that we're going to win this war. I mean, this is a war of wills.
Yep.
Okay?
And that's where I said earlier that I didn't do enough. I mean, I can tell you this government election, not only am I going to be involved in what you're doing and getting the word out, but I'm going to be knocking on doors. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be following the liberals as they're knocking on doors and, pissing the people off, and I'm going to come in right behind them and say, "Hey, you want a real solution here? Here's a real candidate."
Absolutely.
I'm going to be involved.
Think about this for a second. And again, I'm always basically saying that if the American people speak, and whatever it is that they say, then because we have an election system here where winner takes all. You have to get a majority of the votes. Now, I don't want to talk about the Electoral College for a second. I'm talking about, but if 75% or 60%, like you said, if that many of the American citizens go out and actually vote, then the result is going to better represent the American people.
Yes.
But if only a third of the population goes to the polls, that means the other 2/3 that are sitting around complaining about it, they just need to shut up.
Well, you're absolutely right. If you didn't vote, you don't have it. You can't make a statement. And I agree with you.
If there's 50 million people right now that are on some sort of a social assistance or welfare, if you want to call it that, and Barack Obama got 53 million, and Mitt Romney got 49 million, and the 49 million that voted for him were people that are driving the Mercedes or the new Volkswagens or the Lexuses or whatever. They're not representative of the middle class. It's the other 150 million people are you and me, Jeff. Even though we voted in the last election, I'm simply saying that our station in life. I mean, we're the ones that are suffering. See, the guy who's getting a welfare check every week and getting his rent paid with a voucher is not suffering.
Yeah.
Okay. So. But if he's the only one going out and voting, then guess what?
Yep.
Whatever you do or I do, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So we have to get out and vote. And people need to stop telling each other that your vote doesn't count, because it does count.
Yep. No, I'm with you. I mean, was it Tom Brokaw we were talking? He did a PSA. Tom Brokaw, of all people, did a PSA last week as I was driving. I was shocked where he comes out and he says, look, he said in the GOP, they've lost over 5% of their membership. I think it's down to 25% of the American people, will call themselves a Republican. They said in the Democratic Party, there's about 32% that call themselves a Republican. Everybody else is independent. And Tom Brokaw's, argument was, why is the debates controlled by a two-party system? Why don't we have a three-party system? Because the third party actually has more members than the other two parties.
Yeah, but here's my thing. When I talk about the Independent American Citizen Party, I'm using those words because they describe exactly what I think we are. But where the hell did a party system come from anyway? Who invented that, and why did the American people agree to that? Well, I don't think that they did. I think that over time they basically,
it evolved.
They put themselves in, and it's just like, changing our Constitution and trying to go after our rights and Second Amendment rights, First Amendment, whatever. I mean, Tom Brokaw is right. There are more members in the other parties than there are in the other two combined, but what do we do to get the other people out to vote? Well, we got to stop allowing people to tell you that your vote doesn't count. I virtually, on the internet, you can only virtually do something. I slapped this dude the other day virtually. I told him, I said, dude, you are the problem. Yeah. When you sit here and you spew your bullshit about, well, your vote doesn't count, votes are rigged, the voting machines, blah, 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 blah. So, in other words, you've given up. So now you want to come on social media and get everybody else to give up. Yeah. Why don't you just go take your head and put it right back in the sand where it belongs? Yeah. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Stop debating with these people. Stop. When people say things like that, I mean, if they're your best friend, they're not your best friend. Walk away from them.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that upsets me is I hear and I've watched the audio and the video and the recordings of the Diebold machines and the voting machines and how corrupt they are. Well, that's why you need to get even more so involved, and that's why us as citizens need to make sure that type of corruption is not going over. If in your voting precinct that you have 32,000 members and all this stuff is accessible, and that the turnout was 78%. Well, when you had 42,000 people in your district vote, something doesn't. I with my elementary education, I can deduce that there's something going on there.
Well, there's only one thing that's going to offset that or to combat that, and that is for the patriots. They keep running their mouths every day about how patriotic they are and how much they love this country. They need to be out of their beds on Election Day, starting this year, 2014, 15, and 16. Mm-hmm. They need to go to their polling places, and they need to vote.
Yes.
And they need to stay there, and they need to watch, and they need to see what's going on. Because what I've done is I've got them putting together all of the election results in every congressional district in the United States, and that's going on to the website soon. And what we're going to do is we're going to compare this year's turnouts to the midterm elections last time in 2012. Because what I'm looking for is because with all this patriotism that I keep hearing for the last 2 years, we should have a 20 to 30% bump in the turnout.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll be able to physically, right in front of your eyes, you'll be able to say, here's my congressional district. I live in Virginia, 1st Congressional District. I think last year there was 42,000 votes. I'm sorry, 4,200 votes. If I don't see that number up around 6,800 or 7,000, then game over, brother.
Yeah.
That means that all this hot air that's being spewed out of people's bodies and mouths and stuff like that is just that. It's just hot air.
And I think that the government, and that's like I said, is that the strategists. That's why they're not really concerned at this point, because the strategists are, they know human nature. They've studied us, they've dissected us. They have their scientists And if you want to throw that whole model off, you're absolutely correct. If we see a larger than normal turnout, if we see a 20% or a 30% bump, that is game on. I'm with you. Game on. And we got to do everything possible to get it to that level. We have to do a 30. And
right. So when Steve asked me, well, what are you going to do when, with all these out-of-work federal government employees in 2016, I'm giving you a very canned, over-the-top kind of answer. Well, the truth of the matter is I don't really know exactly what we're going to do, because first thing we're going to do is bring back jobs in manufacturing. I know how I'm going to do that. Those people are just going to have to meld into that. But my point in saying that again is what I'm concentrating on right now is how do I get another 75 million American citizens to get off their asses on election days and go vote. Now, I'm also asking them not to only get off their ass on election day and go vote, but sometime between now and election day, find out who the hell it is you're voting for. And make sure that who you're sending to Washington as your congressman or your senator is somebody that represents the values that you hold.
Yeah.
Okay?
Nope.
I guess a couple weeks ago I said, if it has an R or D or Republican or Democrat after the name, don't bother.
Yeah.
Because I've already convinced myself that those people are corrupt, and they are corruptible.
Yes.
Because the machine that they work for is so big, so highly corrupted. It's almost insane.
Yep.
So, like Tom Brokaw said, there's more of us than there are of them, folks. It's a government of the people, by the people, for the people.
Yep.
There is no people involved in it anymore. It's all corrupted. It's all criminals. It's all corporations.
Well, and that's the other thing. You talk about what we can do. If you're truly sincere and you're truly not an armchair patriot, if you're truly a patriot, I mean, I'm going to take it one step further. Not only, obviously I'm going to be out there voting, but I've actually reached out to my local election, and I am getting, there are classes to become a precinct captain, or to actually work the
voting judge. Yes,
the work. Yes. Yeah, I mean, and so there's class, and you need to, if you guys want to do that, you need to go to your local election board, which is always at your city hall, and you need to get that information, because there is deadlines that you have to fill out. And I'm gonna go. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be checking names, and I'm gonna, that's my civic duty. We've got to hold the election process in the highest of regard.
Absolutely. When you do that, Jeff, and I encourage everybody to do that. I think that's a fantastic idea. Now, just in case that doesn't work, meaning you're sitting there at the table, you're checking off names, that's great. But in the end, if 1,000 people are registered to vote at that polling location, and 1,100 show up and vote, we got a problem.
Oh, well, yeah, and that's why I'm doing it.
Right. But my point is, at that point, once they close the voting for the day and they announce the results, if those results don't jive, I'm asking my supporters to seize the evidence.
Yes.
And to grab a sheriff and to have those records sealed for evidence.
Well, regardless,
not just in Wisconsin, my friend, but I'm talking about at all 38,000 polling places in this country.
Yes. I'm a firm believer. I mean, we need to, everybody, if you want to be a part of the solution in this, everybody that's here, you need to take off the day of work or 2 days. There's nothing more precious right now than our votes, and especially in this fight. And we need to all go, and we need to have every. See, the notion is that you have these precinct captains there, but typically when I went, they were all retired, and I don't have anything against obviously the other retired people, but I didn't see any young people. I didn't see any business. They were all retired individuals because the work or their lack of work allowed them to do that or volunteer. Well, I'm going to be there. I'm volunteering. I'm signing up. I'm going to classes. And I'm
Here's the problem: Stone Anthony doesn't know that, because you haven't been paying attention to my website, and on my website, we're asking people to not obviously, in blood or anything like that, but will you commit to taking the day off of election? And there's a place in there for you to say yes.
Yep.
And then we're asking you to discover what your congressional district is and who your congressman is and your senators and things like that. So when you get a chance, Jeff, I need you to log into the site and finish that, and answer those questions, because that's going to help us identify who and where, we have people that we can do what it is we're talking about doing. So we're going to take that 1 million signatures and we're turning it into a workforce of, a workforce for patriotism to make sure that the process actually works.
Yeah.
So don't reinvent the wheel. We've already begun to do that. So maybe you and I need to talk a little bit more, off the air or something like that about what we're doing. But we're putting in place a system so that we have people at every polling place in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, when election day comes, and if those results do not make sense, because the registered voter rolls are public, public information, and we can get those.
Yeah.
And we will get those.
Yeah, the freedom of information.
So I can't tell you. I mean, if there's 1,000 registered voters at your polling place, at your library where you vote, Jeff, I can't tell you that all 1,000 are going to come out to vote, but I can tell you that 1,100 of them aren't going to come out to vote. That's damn sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And if the 1,000, you get my point. My point is that no more people can vote at a polling place than there are registered voters for that polling place.
And that that's the thing, is that in our, and I don't know how it is in your state, but in Wisconsin, when I go vote, they actually have my signature on you go in, your name's on the list, you show them your driver's license, you sign the form upside down, you sign the form, they compare it to your driver's license, and then they give you your voter, and they actually have a copy of your signature already on file. If there's an issue, they can pull it and see, because when you it's all tied to the driver's license, and then you go vote.
Well,
now,
absolutely.
But now the federal government has with these court cases, you can do same day registration, which means I can walk in there and as long as I have a bill or a utility bill or whatever, I can walk in there and vote. I can do my registration that day and also vote the same day, and that's where the issues come into play.
But if I've got 600 Stone Anthony supporters standing out in the parking lot that have been there all day watching the polls and looking at the different people going in and basically being engaged, okay, and at the beginning of the day there was 1,000 registered voters. I mean, okay, let's say that they did sign up another 100 voters. That doesn't matter. My point is, if at the end of the day they come out and they say Stone Anthony got 100 votes and Hillary Clinton got 800 votes and Ted Cruz got 300 votes, well, the 600 Stone Anthony voters out in the parking lot are going to say, oh, hell no. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you. No, I'm with you.
There's more. Yeah.
I'm with you.
But what I'm saying is the day after is not going to matter. A week later, that's just crying over spilled milk.
Yeah.
But we need to use our sheriff's, deputies. We need to use our sheriff's offices. And when you see something that is because voter fraud is a crime, people. It's a felony.
Yep.
Fines and imprisonment, more than you'll ever be able to pay.
Yep.
So we're not talking about a civil matter here. We're talking about, Mr. Sheriff, I would like to swear out an affidavit that I saw a crime take place, and I need you to do a police report.
Yep.
You understand what I'm saying?
No, I'm with you.
I need those
absolutely
records sealed. I mean, I need that evidence collected.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so,
we as American citizens, regardless who was perpetrated against, it was a crime against us as Americans, all of us.
Absolutely.
And that's the attitude that we, if it's Stone or if it's Hillary or if it's whoever, if they violate the election laws and they do that, it doesn't matter. They have destroyed the process, and we need to go. I'm with you, brother.
Listen, the process is destroyed. Make no mistake about that.
Yeah.
Now, early on in our conversations, we were talking about, well, we didn't do enough as patriots prior to all of this crap happening, prior to Obama, prior to Bush, prior to Clinton. We buried our heads in the sand.
Yeah.
Well, we've chosen to pull our heads out of the sand, and I'm talking about the Patriots now. They have been beating the drum here for at least the last 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months that I've been paying attention to, this Patriot movement that we're talking about here. And so those numbers should be a lot higher.
Oh, it's depressing when you see it. I mean, and like I say, and that's the thing I love about Patriot FB. I'm going to give a shameless plug. The individuals that are there are active. The individuals that aren't active at Patriot FB, we boot them. I don't make any bones about it. I'll tell people this. The people that are there, you will go to Patriot FB and you will see the same people posting. You'll see new people coming in and they're getting engaged and everything. But for the most part, it's the same, and that's what it's all about. If you're just going to sign up and hang the cute kitten and say hang in there or whatever, you're gone. You're out of. We only have so much space for people. And right. we're not gonna blow the resources.
Well, here's what I need. I need votes. What I mean is I need a larger number of votes than any of the two candidates combined that the Republicans and the Democrats put up. So if 53 and 49 were the counts for Obama and Romney, that means we got to be somewhere in the 100 million range. I know that there are 150 million patriots out there that are sitting on the sidelines, that are saying to themselves and to each other, my vote doesn't count. It's all corrupted. Those electronic voting machines are bad. George Soros controls the elections. I swear to God, I'm so glad that all of this is being said in a virtual world, because imagine if you had to hear that in your ears every day.
I don't mean to laugh, but you're right.
Time to stop talking about what's wrong with it and start talking about what we can do to fix it.
Well, and that's part of the strategy. And I've always said that is part of the strategy. They want to keep you away from the polling vote. And I'm a firm believer, Stone, as I sit here and I tell you, if you want to screw up the strategists, we've got to get, like you said, we've got to get more than 60%. If we can get more than 60% of the American people to show up at the polling booths nationally, now in some areas it's different, but nationally and stuff, that will throw up. That will throw a wrench in all of their strategies.
I'm not trying to screw up the strategy. I'm not trying to play a game with them. I'm trying to let people know that your freedoms and your liberties are frickin' gone in the very near future if you don't get your butt out of bed and participate in what's happening to your country.
Yeah.
If you want to vote for Hillary, then stand on top of a chair and scream it as loud as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Make an intelligent argument, and I'll tell you what, I'll support you. I don't support Hillary Clinton. I certainly think you're an idiot for voting for her. But if you can make an argument that makes sense, then I support you, because you're exercising your individual right to vote, and to do what you want to do. And I support the other 50 million idiots that are going to do that. Okay, but they're not my concern right now. My concern is you, Jeff, and me, and Steve, and Joe, and everybody else. They keep talking about how much they love this country, but then they throw names out there like Ted Cruz or Mitt Romney or whatever the other jerk's name is, Mike Lee, or this Gary guy from the Libertarian Party. It trips me out.
Yeah.
It trips me out.
I got you.
The only thing you have in your arsenal right now that you can do to actually reverse this trend that's going on in this country as far as your freedoms and liberties being stripped from you is to vote.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Think about it.
You're absolutely I agree with you, because
I've been at this now for 7 months, and I've challenged a bunch of people. Give me another way. Well, we can demand that he resign. I said, give me a way that we can do this. That's not reality. That's fantasy land.
Yeah. No, and I think that you're absolutely correct. It's wasted air. It's wasted energy. It's another distraction that they want you to focus or fixate on.
It's annoying, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's annoying, actually.
Yeah.
To be honest with
Move
you.
on. I agree. Spend the time doing other things. If you're going to make up and you're absolutely correct. I mean, I see it all the time. Even at Patriot FB, when I go out there, you see the same stuff posted over again. It's like, look, we already know what the problem is. Let's start talking about, like you said, the solutions. Let's start, showing people how to overcome this. We all know that.
Let's shift gears here for a second. Let me do you a favor. Let's shift. You heard about the coffin photograph with the so-called National Guardsman?
Yes, I actually just saw it today, and I saw a glimpse of it today, and I haven't really read into it.
Yeah, that was just a yes or no. That's cool. But forget the picture for a second. When I first saw it, just like you said, I thought, no, this can't be real. This is somebody screwing with Photoshop. There's no way that you could find 15 people that are that ignorant.
Yeah. Oh,
well,
no,
apparently you can.
They're out there.
Well, apparently they did, and they were all standing there around that empty coffin, and they were acting like idiots. Now, what do you do with something like that? To me, it's not a debate.
Yeah.
That's a dishonorable discharge. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. And
immediately.
Yes. Yes.
There is no investigation. Here's the photograph.
Yeah.
Here's your tweets. You're toast.
Yeah, you're done.
Now, let's put that aside for a second. Let's talk about the mentality within that National Guard group. And that's in your town, by the way, or in your state.
I know.
Okay. What does it say about our nation that we spawned those individuals? Those people came out of, I assume, other American citizens.
Mm-hmm.
What does it say about us as a nation that we grew? I got to be so careful here, because this is one of those things where you could really offend somebody. How did such uneducated, uncool people? How did that happen?
Here, let me add an adjective for you, so you don't get in trouble. Asshats.
Well, no, yeah, they were absolutely asshats. No, I don't mind saying that. I was thinking, there's something. We have drilled this into our society that kind of shit is okay.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. That's what you
get.
That's
in our military. Look what we've done to our military. Yep. These guys, and they certainly don't represent the entire military. But I'm going to tell you right now, in my day and age, when I was in the service, there's no possible way that something like that would have ever happened.
Well, they would have been out of uniform. I mean, my whole thing is that they would have been stripped. Their stripes would have been ripped off, and they would have, general court-martial, dishonorable discharge. And,
which is going to happen, but what I'm saying, I'm trying to get into the mental part of it. And I'm not talking about what's the punishment. I'm saying in the psyche, in the minds of the soldiers, the airmen, the sailors, the Marines, nothing like that would have even been considered. Because you remember back then, we didn't even allow photographs to be taken of coffins.
Well, that
was something that Bush started, after, during the Iraq War, remember?
Yeah.
Folks, if you had any illusions that I was a Bush fan, I wasn't, okay?
Yeah.
I didn't hate him, just like I don't hate Barack Obama. I'm not a fan of him, but I don't hate him. These guys are the puppets. They're the face of something bigger that's going on.
Yes.
We're at war here, folks,
yep.
for our nation's sovereignty.
Yep. And actually, Stone, I agree with you. I just want to make sure that we get this in. I don't know. Did you go out to Patriot FB? There's a question there for you, and it segues right into the topic that we're talking about.
Yeah, I got it open here, but the screen went blank. Let me just. Who asked it? I see it. New chat message. Alan Taylor.
No, Matt Patriot says, I love Stone.
I love that Stone is intelligent, but does he truly understand that this is not just a government type shift? That this is not just a gov type shift?
Basically.
How does he expect? What?
How are you going to affect a culture? This is more than just eliminating, the idiots up there on the hill. This is, we have to affect mental change and cultural ideology. How do we address that? And it goes right into what you're saying. You got National Guard here who are just completely so freaking mind numb.
Well, I've answered this question many times before, so let me go ahead and answer it again. And
sure.
I think that, you can't legislate morality. You can't just pass a law that says, okay, everybody is now an American, or everybody has not an American. Everybody is going to put a smile on their face, and they're going to go to work every day, and they're going to like it. Okay, you can't pass laws like that. Mm-hmm. What we've done in this country, and if you look at the trend, it's on a downward trend of jobs, of the ability for people to earn a living. They're losing their homes. They're losing their cars. They're behind in their taxes. They're being raped at the airport. Everywhere you turn, there's something wrong. There's something going on. You get pulled over by a cop, and he wants to drag you out of the car by your hair and slam your face on the concrete. You're being lied to in the media every day. So I think his question is, how do you reverse that? How do you begin to do that? Well, I think that once we put America back to work, I think that many of these problems that we're seeing right now are going to correct themselves, or they're at least going to get better. The morality in this country is extremely low, as evidenced by those 15 asshats in that picture. Mm-hmm. Okay? Like I said, that wouldn't have happened 30 years ago. I don't think that it would have happened. I can't imagine it happening. But the sad thing is, I can't imagine that happening now. Okay?
Yeah.
I can't imagine some 6-year-old kid looking at his mommy and saying, "Look, bitch, make me breakfast."
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine that 30 years ago. Okay? So we've got... First of all, I mean, there's many things that go along with the jobs in the manufacturing. We've talked about it. We've got to fix the criminal immigration problem. We've got to fix the debt that we've got in this country is extremely high. We spend more outside of this country than we should be, to the tune of trillions of dollars, and we need to stop doing that. Countries of this world, or nations of this world, have to understand that America can no longer afford to carry your water for you. You're going to have to do it yourself for a while. And if that means we have to pull out of the world economy, then that's what we're going to do. And I've stated that too. So, I mean, we still want to be a good neighbor. We still want to help everybody if they're in, dire need. But, to prop up an entire nation like Egypt is the most stupidest thing that we could have ever done.
Oh yeah.
All in the name of peace and oil. No, I don't think so.
No, there's
not while Jeff Norton is, having to, once a month or whatever, or once a quarter, go down to the welfare office and reaffirm his, his need for food stamps or whatever it is. I'm just using it as an example.
I was going to say, I don't get food stamps.
So there is no way that we can legislate the morality in this country to go up. We just have to act in a way that, when I say we act in a way, like the government has got to stop seemingly attacking the American people and stop making them, stealing everything that they work hard for.
Yeah.
Well, you're being taxed at 50, 60, 70%.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, we need to be proud about being Americans again, and not just because we're Denver Bronco fans or whatever. My thing is that we also need to get rid of the. I hear it so many times. You talk about the American psyche. Well, what difference does it make? I hear that more and more from. It doesn't matter. I hear people say that all the time. Well, it doesn't matter. If I go vote, that defeatist attitude that you're talking about, and that's exactly what they're counting on. That's exactly what that attitude is. Exactly what they're counting on.
This government is responsible for those 15 assholes that took that picture, with that coffin. I directly relate that because we haven't seen it yet, and I know there's a very small percentage, but like allowing the Islamic soldiers that are practice that religion to practice the religion while they're in uniform by wearing turbans and having beards, because the religion doesn't allow them to shave. Kiss my ass. This is an all-volunteer army. You know that when you join the military, you've got to shave and you can't wear a turban.
Yes.
Now, I'm not picking on the Islamic faith here, but I can't recall too many Christians saying, hey, I want to do a certain thing because my religion doesn't allow me to do it.
Yeah.
My religion tells me, thou shalt not kill.
Yeah.
Okay? But we still go into war and we still shoot our guns and we still kill people. Because why? Because they're trying to kill us.
Yeah.
So,
no, and I saw that. I was just like, once again, it's the non-military politicians and last time I checked, the United States military doesn't answer to
we
political
put the fun in
correctness.
funeral. First of all, I'm trying to think if I was commander-in-chief, and of course that's the Wisconsin National Guard, but they were federalized, weren't they? So they do work for the commander-in-chief, right? They were.
No, they're actually under the they are under if they're National Guard, unless they're active duty, they are not. They are still under the governor of the state of Wisconsin.
Okay, but I think well, it doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is, if they were under my command, which I guess ultimately the commander-in-chief would be, they're going to do some time. I'm sorry, they're going to make it so that the next idiot that thinks about doing something like that won't. Yeah. But there again, I have to blame the government also, and the government needs their ass smacked too. Because there's a reason why we had a policy for no photographs of our fallen, coming off the planes and going into Dover,
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. Because that's a private thing, because it's not something that you want to commercialize, and it's certainly not something you want to make fun of.
Yep.
For a cheap Facebook photo or a tweet or whatever the hell it's called. Come on. When I saw it, I said to the guy, no, that's not real. I mean, it was disturbing as it was. They're just, it's a Photoshop thing. Somebody did that. No, those were real people standing there acting like real idiots. But anyway.
No, she did, and well, actually, they're now getting death threats and all of that on Facebook.
And the National Guard Facebook page apparently blew up with,
Oh yeah.
As it should. But you know something? That's a reflection on the entire state of Wisconsin and the citizens of the country of Wisconsin.
Well, those
are your sons and daughters.
Yes. And I'm kind of waiting. Like I said, I just saw it today. Right as I was about an hour before I was going on air. And I didn't read into it, so I'm like, this couldn't be true. I mean, what the heck's going on here? Now that I'm actually reading the article I'm reading it from NPR, believe it or not. If Governor Walker doesn't do something or come out and say, because ultimately, but this is the thing, is that they're actually in Arkansas, so this would not be, even though they're from the Wisconsin Guard, they're in Arkansas doing the training, so they would actually fall under, well, they all fall under the Defense Department. I mean, these guys shouldn't even be I don't even know why they're walking the streets. They should be locked up in Leavenworth until they get their trial.
Well, exactly. But I think where you were going with that, I think I probably would have agreed with that. If Scott Walker does not act,
well, no, if he doesn't act, yes, if he doesn't act, that is, as much as I praise the man, that right there tells me, you don't dishonor the American men and women in uniform. Not game over. I don't care who you are. The minute you do that, I have no respect for you. And so I'm waiting to see. I'm going to see what Scott Walker does tomorrow. If he doesn't do anything,
I'm going to go ahead because obviously there's an article in the LA Times where they're already playing the race card. So the young lady that did that tweet or whatever that put the fun back and she's black. So I suspect Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson will be coming to Wisconsin pretty soon, and they'll be
They're not
raising all kinds of hell about how
they're not going to come. They're not going to come here. I can
if
tell you. If
there were a white person that tweeted that, we wouldn't be talking about this. That's what they'd be saying.
Yeah,
so
whatever.
But if you look at the picture, I think there was only 2 black people in it. The rest of them were white idiots too. So
yeah. So the National Guard basically told them that it's under. Like I said, they.
It's under investigation.
It's under investigation.
This is one of those times where I don't think we need to spend $10 million to investigate something. Just look at the picture. Look at her tweet account. Is she going to deny it? Are they going to deny that that's them standing in the picture?
Yes. Well, no, I mean, they're not. My thing is their argument is, well, it wasn't disrespectful because it was an empty casket. Regardless, it was insensitive, and it goes right to the unit cohesion, rules. And look, if I can get discharged because I have an extramarital affair, or if I have an affair, I just don't get it. I don't. Well, I think these guys are gonna. I think they're getting a boot, and rightfully so. Yeah, rightfully so.
It'll be I'll be curious to see how it plays out. But I think to answer Matt's question, I don't know if he's typing more. I think feet across the room there, but how it is handled will speak volumes of how, whether our state governments or our federal governments, how serious they take the American culture and the pride that we should have in our nation. There's nothing fun about what they did. It's not a joke. It's just like the knockout game.
Yeah.
What those guys did was they just knocked out 22 million veterans by doing that stupid shit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm reading what this guy here wrote again. I don't know why. Do you agree that part of the traditions we need to get back? Do you agree that part of the traditions we need to get back to are, in fact, that our prez is not a lawmaker and no one man can change all minds, but he is definitely the most important coach for the American people. He wants us to win, but advises us on the correct way to do it and how to act once achieved. I think what he's asking for is the President of the United States is the leader. I mean, even though Congress makes the laws and the Supreme Court upholds them and things like that, people look to the President for leadership.
Yes.
They set the tone. They set the direction, whatever his agenda is. Well, my agenda is to put the American citizens back in charge and back in the core of everything we do. So, that's the direction I'm going to take the country. And as where it is right now is the corporations and the federal government are stealing from us, even the ones that voted for him, even the people that voted for Barack Obama and for this criminal, impotent Congress are being stolen from.
Yeah.
And we're going to put an end to that.
Yeah. Yep.
So, what were you going to say, Jeff?
Well, no, I was just I was reading what he was writing there, and I agree. I think that the President of the United States, even though he is one branch of our government, he is still
he's the guy.
He's the CEO. He's the face of absolutely, and I guess the question is,
and he's the leader of the party. So, like for example, Barack Obama right now is the de facto leader of the Democratic National Party. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm looking for when we win this thing, when we take back our nation, and I'm, hired by the American Patriots to lead this nation, the leader of the American, Citizens Party would be myself. But see, when people ask me questions, now he didn't ask it quite the same way, but we're all in this together. I'm a citizen also. I'm a patriot also. I struggle every day. I'm a veteran. I'm a disabled veteran. I'm at war with my own government for my own personal things. We all have our stories. But if we continue down the path that we're going right now with those robber barons, those millionaires, all 435 congressmen 100 senators are all millionaires. Do you really think they can relate to what you and I struggle with every day? Absolutely not. So, does President Obama represent the American people? I don't think so. He represents, 38%. He represents 19.5% of the population of the United States, because he got 19% of the vote of the people that voted.
Yeah,
that's not representative of me, certainly.
Yeah.
Now, Jeff, I know you voted for him not once but twice, and you'd probably vote for him a third time if you had the opportunity.
Now, why would you go there, Stone? Why would you even go there, man? It was a lovely evening. You know, why would you even go there?
I mean, and I tell you what, if I hear somebody tell me one more time that this guy's going to run for a third term, he's going to declare martial law before then, I mean, oh my God, it just drives me so insane. You know, I want to have a real debate. I want to use facts. I love people's opinions, and I love the conspiracy side of things. But folks, like Jeff's been alluding to tonight, I think, these are the tactics that they're using to keep us off of our message and off of our game.
Yeah, they
19% voted for Barack Obama.
Yep.
That means the other 80% of this country doesn't give a shit.
Yeah. No, and that's sad. I mean, that's just...
And if you don't, that's okay. I mean, I guess, you know, it's not okay with me, but I mean, it's okay because that's reality. That's where we're at, right?
But don't complain.
Don't complain. But number two is that when 2016 comes, me and about 50 million of my buddies aren't going to sit around and wait another 4 years for Hillary Clinton to even, you know, entrench the law enforcement and the military deeper into, I said the military, the Department of Homeland Security, allow them to dig in deeper and deeper. Yeah. You know, folks, every day that goes by, our chances of getting our country back to, you know, the American way is diminishing greatly. You know,
yep.
We're all going to be speaking something else in about 20 years. I won't be, because I won't be alive then. But my grandkids,
yeah,
you know, my grandkids are going to live to be another 60 years, another 70 years. Think about it. Your grandkids also.
Yeah.
They are going to be living in a communistic, Marxist, tyrannical, all these bad isms that you keep hearing about. Socialism.
Yep. They're going to be, you know, and they're going to be working for the collective. And
absolutely.
As
you know, it's funny. I use that word in one of my issue statements, collective evolution, when I talk about the educational system in here, because, you know, this is like welfare or hope and change. I mean, these words, like you said, they use these words and they redefine them to suit whatever it is they're trying, because they're trying to hit a sense inside of the human psyche. You know,
yep.
Folks, it's time to get up, put your damn boots on, and stomp your ass down to your polling place and exercise your right to vote.
Yep. No, I'm
and everybody needs to do it.
Absolutely. Well, Stone, as we roll here into the, once again, we have consumed almost 2 hours, my friend.
Yeah, we need a couple of days.
We do, my friend, and stuff. Well,
here's what we need to do. We need the folks at this stage of the game. They need to go read, you know, the information on Patriot FB. They need to check out my website, stoneanthony.com. They need to know, you know, where they're supposed to be voting, who they're voting for or not voting for, and they need to work with their community of other like-minded people to make sure that on that particular day, also in 14, 15, and 2016, to make sure that this tyranny that you're all talking about and that we're all feeling doesn't continue. That's the only way we can stop it.
Absolutely. Get involved. Be part of it. Well, sir, once again, thank you very much. for joining us. Not a problem. I know it's late for you. And
you don't have anybody to announce tonight, do you?
I do. I have one.
You do? Oh, my goodness. Well, God bless you, brother.
Thank you, my friend.
I really appreciate you doing that.
No, come on.
We'll chat with you next week. But let's try to get together during the week, all right?
I will. I mean, things are calming down. I mean, obviously, for the last 2 weeks, it's like every other week here, but, we've got everything moved over to the new servers. These servers here have been constantly under attack, but they're threading it off. I mean, they're doing a great job, and I think things are now stable again. And I actually did get a response back from Facebook. They said, quote unquote, we can reconnect to Facebook now. What happened, they said it was not intentional what they did, but what happened is they upgraded their application side, and because of that upgrade, it caused issues. But they have welcomed us back to connecting to Facebook, and we're not going to do it though. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, you don't need to.
I don't. We have enough people that are coming out on a daily basis now, and I think as the word gets out, and I know that we have a major alternative news site that's going to be writing an article about us. So we're, but I think things are calmed down for me. That I do have time to get back to the business of the business here. So I will be. I'll give you a call, and I am looking at coming out your way, anyways.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I want to, in the spring, I want to come out. I've got a couple, not clients, but I got some good friends / clients that are out there, and give me a good excuse to come and see you. And we got to get this thing nailed down for the road trip. So,
absolutely.
All right, sir.
All right, brother.
All right, take care of yourself, and thanks for joining us, my friend. Mr. Stone Anthony, presidential candidate for 2016. And everything. And you can join us here every Tuesday. If you have any questions or whatever, get out to patriotfb.com. I do apologize. For some reason, the other line is not going through. And for those that were trying to call in, I don't know what's going on. We have these glitches every once in a while, and that's the problem is when you're a one-man show, normally we'd have a Sturbley. We would tell them to fix the line or do whatever, and while we're doing the show. But it is me. I am sitting here at Command Central, pushing the buttons and turning the knobs as we are speaking and everything. So what we're going to do is take a quick break. Obviously, a lot of information. I do want to talk about these National Guard soldiers a little bit more, and then we'll honor the fallen, and then we'll just wrap up the evening and stuff. But you're listening to Jeff Norton, the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. I am your host. Join me here every Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. till 12 a.m. Central Standard Time, or on the web at www.patriotfb.com. That is www.patriotfb.com.
Join us at www.patriotfb.com, a social network for patriots. For all your prepping needs, visit our friends at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com or call 208-615-6331. 208-615-6331. Get involved. Support Stone Anthony for President. www.stoneanthony2016.com. Put a real American in the White House.
listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. I am your host. Last hour and a half, we had Mr. Stone Anthony, presidential candidate for 2016, joining us. He's here every Tuesday night to talk about topics, take your questions, hear us kind of banter each other a little bit. That's all. It's all about the conversation, and that's one thing that I can't stress this enough with Stone or anybody. It's all about the conversation. We'll go ahead and stop that. This show is geared towards us communicating. We talk about this all the time, and I can't, as we get new listeners and stuff, I want to kind of, go back and discuss this. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but think of it as us sitting around a table having a conversation. Now, when you have a conversation with someone, obviously there's going to be things that you disagree or agree with. It's going to get heated. And everything. And Stone and I, there's a lot of things that we agree on. There's a lot of things that we disagree on. And that's just the way it is. But that's life. But one of the things that I don't know if you guys picked up on, and this is why I really enjoy having Stone on, is that, we're open to each other's opinions. And, he's been able to convince me of some things. I probably haven't convinced him of anything. But no, tongue in cheek and stuff. But and that's what it's all about. So if you'd like to join in the conversation, give us a call 1-800-580-4870. That's 1-800-580-4870 as we wrap up the evening and everything. But it's always interesting, and it's going to become even more so here in the near future as issues and debate topics start coming up. Sorry about that. I had to do a little readjustment and everything. But what a night. Great conversation. Always enjoy having Mr. Anthony on in the conversation and everything. So if you'd like to join in, once again, give us a shout at patriotfb.com. Get registered out there. Now, our registration process is this, and I want to make sure that everybody's perfectly clear. When you register for patriotfb.com, you have to put in a valid email address. That's just one thing of making sure that you're not a spammer. The other thing is that we will verify you. And no, it's not the NSA type verify or whatever. What it is that we want to make sure that you are coming from where you say you're coming from. In other words, we don't allow, for those that don't know this, that we don't allow anybody from outside the United States. We'll let Great Britain, Ireland, and the United States and Canada pretty much. And anybody else and stuff, our topics are kind of the same. It's kind of like the big heave-ho that the Venezuelan government gave to the American ambassadors in Ukraine, where everybody's telling, America, this ain't your fight, stay out of it. And that's kind of the attitude that I have. This is, the patriotic movement, as much as, Australia is behind doing their thing and the Egyptian Spring and all that's their battle. Let them fight that. We have a big enough battle here, so we do restrict. Now, if for whatever reason, if you're traveling and you need to get access, all you have to do is shoot me an email, jeff@themidnightpatriot.com. That's jeff@themidnightpatriot.com, and we'll make arrangements to get you through the firewall. We had to do that. You can only imagine the amount of attacks that we're getting, and it's kind of ironic. It is kind of funny. As I was talking to my security specialist that we've hired, the firm that's actually watching our sites now, they said, we get attacked from all three sides. All sites get the normal Nigerian, Russian, China hacks that are normal. That's just the nature of being on the internet. But we're actually getting attacked from the liberals, and we're also getting attacked from the GOPs. I know as well, because we don't pick sides. We are freedom-loving Americans who adhere to the Constitution. That's all we ask. I don't tell people I'm a Tea Party. I don't tell people. I lend myself more towards a libertarian because that's easier to tell people. But I will tell you, I am a God-fearing constitutionalist. I feel that everything that I need to run my government is written right there in the pages of the United States Constitution. And everything I need to do to run my life is is given to me by God. And so, that's what I believe. That's my profession of faith, if you want to use that word here. And that's, but you might agree with me, you might not. It's, I'm open for discussion. I understand I've got a lot of good friends at Patriot FB that are atheists, don't believe in the same tenets of Scripture that I do and stuff, and that's fine. That's perfectly okay, because no one says that you have to be a Christian to be a patriot. There is none of that, and I don't, and I would actually argue on your behalf in that regard. I mean, your choice is your choice. I can't sit there in good conscience and tell you that we are all free men and we need to be of free mind and free thinkers, but then turn around and tell you that you need to subscribe to a certain belief and everything. I just don't feel comfortable. And, to be honest with you, I will invoke Scripture on this one, is that God, like he told Abraham, don't worry about them. I'll build a nation upon themselves. As Abraham was worried about his mistress and his soon-to-be son, who obviously went off and built the Muslim nation. And that's kind of my attitude, is that God tells me, don't worry about it. I'll do what, I need to do there. And you focus on what you're doing here, keep it in front of you. With that being said, some more house cleaning information and stuff over the weekend. I want to give you guys fair warning. Over the weekend, we do have some actual upgrades to the site that we're going to be rolling out. These are not changes per se, but these are just patches and different security things that we're doing. We typically do those on Saturday, Sunday night. We don't anticipate the servers going down, but just in case, what we did do is that we actually have another server up and running that we can spin up and have in its place right instantly, and so we're working on that. So, got a caller. I'd like to welcome the caller. Can you state your name and where you're calling from?
Oh, Jeff, it's Matt from Lodi,
California. Matt from Lodi, how are you? We've got about 5 minutes, my friend.
I know, and I'm going to be very quick. And you know what? The questions I asked Stone tonight, I thought, were kind of poignant.
Yes.
And I really, and I don't want people to think that I'm against Stone Anthony in any way, shape, or form, and I'm still willing to talk to him.
Yeah.
But since you're working very quickly, I'm going to spit this out very quickly.
Sure.
I don't feel that the questions I were asked were addressed in necessarily an appropriate manner. I think that the President of the United States of America needs to be able to be that coach that can get up and tell people, hey, this is what needs to happen. Everybody go, yes, that's what we're going to do.
Yes.
But there's just a lot of unanswered questions. I mean, it left me with a page and a half of notes and questions that I would love to sit down and talk to him.
Well,
the one thing that really bothered me is when he addressed Barack Obama as the leader of the Democratic Party. And yes, I do agree that he was a Democratic president, but at the time of achieving presidency, and I think it's very important with the president that once you achieve presidency, you're not the leader of a particular party. You are the leader of the greatest nation in the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's very fair. So this is what I will do, Matt. There's actually two things, and I want to stress this to everybody. If you go out to StoneAnthony2016.com, there's a phone number there. If you call that number 1, Stone's going to pick up. He doesn't have a call center or whatever. It's actually going to be Stone. So
can I break in right there? Now that phone number, I wrote it down when you gave it to me.
Yeah,
and it seemed more like a hotline to me. And I'm not upset, Jeff. Really, I'm not. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to speak quickly.
Yeah.
And if you could maybe possibly shoot me a message on Patriot FB as to how to navigate that correctly. I'm pretty sure I didn't navigate it correctly on my part.
Yeah, I mean, it should have just went right to Stone. Now, he might have changed because of the fact that he's grown, but I'll figure it out. But this is the first thing. I know Stone's still listening, actually. We have a problem. I can't bring you in on the other hybrid, and also we're because of time. What I will do, Matt, is I'll coordinate between you and him. We will get another show sometime this week, if that's okay with you. Get with Stone. I'll look at his schedule, and we'll try to get you two guys on the phone together during the show, and then you guys can, you can talk and everything. And like I said,
I would love it because I'm just a lowly old mechanic, and I'm too smart for my own damn good.
Yeah.
But, I have personal experiences. I have personal friends right now that are actually running for my House of Representatives congressman for my district. Yeah. And they're friends of mine, and they won't even sit down and talk with me.
Yeah, see, Stone. I mean, we'll coordinate something. I'm sure that he's still listening and everything. It is kind of late. He's on the East Coast. So what I'll do is we'll get something together, Matt. And I do apologize the fact that you couldn't get on and actually ask the question in your real voice. So what we'll do is, I'll schedule.
I really did learn how to navigate the Patriot FB a little bit better tonight because of it, and I appreciate that.
That's good. There you go. There you go. So I will, like I said, I know Stone is listening, so we're going to reschedule. Or not reschedule, but I'll get a time where you two guys can get on the phone and you can ask your questions, and he'll be glad. I know Stone well enough; he's going to answer the questions, and part of that too is I have to admit, when Stone and I communicate or when we get together, our conversation style is a little bit different than a normal interviewee kind of relationship. We actually just have a conversation, and then you guys have the opportunity to kind of listen to it and interject. And I apologize for not managing that a little bit better, but that's just the way our show is.
That's the part I appreciate.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll get with Stone, but in the meantime, and this is very important for all of our listeners. Get out to Stone Anthony 2016. Call that phone number. That number, the individual that's going to answer that number, that's going to be Stone. And if you have any questions or whatever, feel free to call them. I don't know what navigation you were going through, because every time I call that number, I go right to a cell phone. So,
can I verify the number I have wrote down with you?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do it over the air right here. Stone's not. I'll give it to you right now. It is area code 202-787-1963. That is the direct number right to Stone Anthony. Feel free to give him a call. I wouldn't call him. It is kind of late tonight, but yeah.
No, not tonight. I wouldn't do that. And this is the part I appreciate about your show.
Well, it's all about communication.
When I wrote down the number, I got dyslexic and I wrote it down incorrectly.
Oh, okay. I was wondering about because it's. I have several people that will call him and they're like, I actually got to talk to Stone Ant. And it's like, yeah, and by the way, when he becomes president, that's the same number that he's going to have as well. So, I'll get you guys on and I'll get the hybrid working. I don't know what's going on with it. We're both lines. Only one line worked tonight, but we'll get it worked out and stuff, my friend. All right, Matt?
Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
I look forward to the tribute.
I will. I'll be in touch, my friend, and we'll be. We gotta wrap it up tonight. We gotta wrap it up. So, Matt from Lodi, and like I said, is like our style, and I've been actually criticized on this and stuff. Our style when Stone is on is more of a conversation, and you guys are actually listening to us communicate with each other just like a round table. Now we're trying to, I don't know what's wrong with the other phone line, why it didn't work, but I'll get working on it tomorrow. I do have some free time, so try to figure out what's going on there. I mean, this equipment is not it's not easy stuff. It's state of the art, but it was state of the art. Sometimes it's very complicated and everything. So with that, I just want to let everybody know I appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you guys have done. I've seen our membership go up at patriotfb.com. There's some great things that are going on out there. Some great shows. Visit my friends over there, AVN, American Voices Now, with Michael Evans, then with Thomas, with Resurrect the Republic Radio right after AVN from 8. AVN's from 8 till 10. From 10 to 11 is Resurrect Radio. Then we'll have music. And at 2 o'clock, join my good friend, JJ McCartney, from 2 to 4. Just outstanding guests he's got lined up. It's incredible. I mean, our show's more of a conversation between you and I. His show is more stream, more guests, and it's just an incredible show. He's been just hitting it out of the park this week. I mean, for the last couple of weeks with his guests, it's just amazing. At the quality and the guests that he's bringing online. It's just incredible. So get out there and listen to J.J. McCarty's, and then after that, we're actually going to be bringing on board the Average Joe show. He's getting some of his things worked out, some production things, and we're working with him. But he's tightening his show up, and it's starting to sound really good. And so we're going to be getting him on, and of course we'll lead off with me going into the midnight hour from 9 until 12. But with that, I also want to say to all of our American soldiers, you will always be in our hearts and in our prayers here at the Midnight Patriot radio show and podcast. We will always remember you. We'll always remember the 22 soldiers that commit suicide every day. The battle, even though they come home from the battlefield, the scars are still there, the issues are still there. We will always remember you. You'll always be in our hearts and prayers. And I just want to let you know that no matter how hard it gets, no matter how it is, we appreciate you. And if you ever need to talk or whatever, feel free to reach out to us, Jeff at themidnightpatriot.com. That's Jeff at themidnightpatriot.com. Give Stone a call. I mean, there's a huge source of, reach out to Freedom Prepper Recon, reach out to all of our members, all of our shows that we do here, and they will make a room for you to talk to you and also help you through these difficult times. But we also do, for those, I know we have a lot of new listeners, every night, unfortunately, as long as there are men and women out there who put their lives on the line, we will always honor those who have paid the ultimate price for their sacrifice. Army Private First Class Joshua A. Gray, February 10th, 2014.